Record. Good October morning to everybody. This is our October 10th FMDiSC meeting. We have some exceptional content today. Some new presenters. We've got a few surprises later. I think we're going to have a really good one today. We're going to, start off with Matt Monroe and Paul Mitchell from Harmonic. They've got some really interesting AI, some local AI, and other tips and tricks that we're going to want to look into. We've got the ever consistent Mr. Chris Moyer helping us with the Tech News Roundup, which is always a favorite segment. We'll have a break. We've got some special announcements today. Then we're going to follow up with a deep dive inside the brain and doings of our newest board member, Sol Rodriguez, followed by that wizard, Jeremy Brown, who's going to show a really cool Excel to FileMaker kind of case study that he's been working on that's quite impressive. Anyway, I think without any further ado, I want to turn loose to the gentleman over at Harmonic, and everybody else, if you could mute your video, mute your audio. We're going to turn these gentlemen loose. Did I make you presenters yet?
Maybe not.
Let's take care of that. How come I am not?
You probably want to make harmonic though.
Yeah, I'm not getting, there we go. Do I need to, I'm just doing just them. Okay, we should be in good shape now.
Hey.
That's it. Yeah.
All right. And we got the slides up. Can you guys hear me?
We got you audio.
Awesome. That is the wrong camera. I mean, it's a good view, the back of my head.
I like the studio audience.
Yeah.
Yes, we do have
the
a
Harmonic Theater in beautiful downtown Dallas, Texas. It's great to see you all here today. I see a lot of familiar faces. Hello to you all. Meanwhile, I have a technical person who's getting working on the right
That's right.
screen to show you, to share.
Teams.
Yeah, that bald spot's getting worse.
All right. Now you guys can see the slides, right?
Much better, much better.
Okay. Great. Well, I'm going to start out here, and I'm going to pass this to Paul in just a little bit, and then we've got some fun stuff to show you here. So just for those who weren't aware, this is a presentation we did at Build, Grow, Learn, and someone suggested, Chris Moyer suggested, hey, we could use some of that. So we've tweaked it a little bit because we've learned some things since then, but it's largely the same idea and same concept. So I'm going to go through some background stuff, and then we're going to dive in. So for those that don't know, my name is Matthew Monroe, and along with my co-founder, Steve Sikora, we started Harmonic Data back in 2004. Actually, we've been working together for almost 30 years, and one of the many things we share in common is that we both have a passion for helping our customers vault over their technical hurdles by writing custom software that focuses on solving their problems, not just merely on writing code. And as such, one of our many tools in our arsenal has always been FileMaker Pro. Steve, in fact, has been a FileMaker developer since 1989. And we have been a Claris Platinum Partner since 1999, well before it was actually called Platinum. So FileMaker is an important tool in our arsenal, but it has never been the only tool. In fact, I've always been the web and integrations guy, and in fact, I'm not a FileMaker guy at all, although I know enough to be quite dangerous. So to that end, I have brought Paul Mitchell here with me.
Hey, everybody, it's great to be with you today. You'll hear more from me soon in a bit.
So Paul has been a FileMaker developer since version 3, and he has been with Harmonic since 2016. And Paul shares our enthusiasm for building solutions that just work. So what does it mean when I say we build solutions? It means that we are not a software-centric company, and we are not even really a database-centric company, although we love databases. Our customers are all very intelligent people, oftentimes brilliant people, not necessarily technical, but they are absolutely subject matter experts in their fields. So a solution to them means putting the right data in the right hands at the right moment. So Harmonic is really a data company. In fact, we are a harmonic data company. And at the heart of all of our software design, scripting, procedural code, and yes, database schema is really, quite simply, a passion for getting data into the right hands of the creative people that need it. So data enables our customers to do the remarkable things they do. And that data is proprietary, and it is their intellectual capital, and it is worth a fortune. It is protected by firewalls, VPNs, encryption, and sometimes millions of dollars worth of hardware. It is frequently subject to compliance regulations or sometimes even protected by federal statutes. So no, we do not ever just send our data out to ChatGPT and ask it what it thinks about X, Y, or Z. At least I hope not. So how do we leverage the benefits that large language models and AI bring to the table without compromising your company's data? You stay local. It is possible to leverage the benefits of AI and LLM on consumer hardware, and that is what we're going to talk about. So to start with, I'm going to kind of give you a 1,000-foot view of what we're going to talk about here. First, I'll introduce you to a customer of ours, ISS. Next, we will discuss the tactics we have used in building a solution for this customer. We will discuss the different pieces that must be balanced for a solution like this one. And we will be looking at the techniques you need to understand to accomplish this. And then show you the results to back up everything that we just shared. We will be moving quickly, but with purpose. So we also need to talk about what the content is and is not going to be. This content is intended to be practical. We are not going to talk about theoretical concepts. The internet is already full of talking heads pontificating on what the age of AI will look like in just a few months. I personally really don't have time for many of the scare tactics and speculation that make for so much clickbait. My hope is that you can take this information we give you here and immediately put it to use in either your own research or in your own attempts to integrate your internal systems with a local LLM. These are methods and technologies that we are actively using and developing for our customers in parallel with developing this content. There are many, many right ways to do these things. We are not attempting to be exhaustive. In many cases, we didn't pick the absolute best way to do something, but instead we went with the options available to us at that time and for the purposes that we chose for this project. So this is not a how-to, it's not a workshop, but kind of a practical guide over the main points of what we are trying to do, how we succeeded and failed at doing it, using hardware and software technology that is available to consumers, all without shipping our data off-site to a public service or AI provider. So caveat, in every major point, we are going to be skimming over the surfaces of many very deep pools. Some of these concepts, along with their underlying technologies, are in fact studies of decades. Again, we are choosing a practical approach versus an exhaustive approach. We are at a very interesting inflection point in the evolution of this industry. Many super complicated tools and processes have been simplified and automated down to tools that we can understand by folks who are not data scientists and on consumer, albeit high-end, consumer hardware. Before we get too far down the rabbit hole, I'm going to hand you a key takeaway from all of our months of researching and learning. As complicated as this underlying technology can be, you will spend 90% of your time or more collecting, preparing, and formatting and testing your data. So this doesn't mean that learning some of this new tech won't stretch your brain. It certainly will. It just means that at the end of the day, a lot of time is spent with data. So let me introduce you to Independent Support Services. Who is ISS? Well, I said we were going to use these techniques and concepts with actual clients. So let me give you some background into one of our favorite clients, Independent Support Services is a company that serves individuals with developmental disabilities in the state of New York that are participants in a program called Self-Direction. In this program, an individual is able to make their own path living at home or in a community and receiving services and supports customized to their own needs and vision. So self-direction is a really big win-win by being designed to cost the state actually less than institutionalized care while providing the individual with a much more personalized and integrated experience. ISS serves as a leading fiscal intermediary for the self-direction program. In simple terms, being a fiscal intermediary means that ISS pays the expense on behalf of the participant and then bills the payee, either Medicaid or the state or the managed care insurance program. So in case you blinked, in those two short paragraphs, I outlined a system that has PII, PHI, PFI, federal and state compliance laws, and a host of regulation rules. It is hardly possible for these folks to even print so much as a blank spreadsheet out without needing the approval of a compliance officer. The irony here is that a powerful large language model, such as what is offered by Anthropic or OpenAI, would be a formidable tool to help them navigate the labyrinthian compliance landscape if it wasn't specifically disallowed by that very same compliance. So how do we do it? How do we proceed? Well, of course, you've already jumped ahead to the answer. It's local AI, local LLM. But how? Here are some tactics. The question most bantered about the water cooler about public AI services is, which service and which model is the best? But what is the question most bantered about regarding private LLM and private AI? You guessed it, it is which model is the best? So this is kind of becoming the new Mac versus PC battleground. And deservedly so. There is a lot at stake. Models and services that rely on vector embeddings must consistently use the same embedding model. You can't mix and match. Different models have their specialities based on their architecture, training approach, and intended use cases. And you should definitely pay attention to those. Furthermore, different AI organizations and different models employ a wide variety of licenses, which you have to pay attention to. It is not just public versus open source, because open source doesn't always mean open source. So here is an overview of factors to consider. What hardware do you have available for hosting your AI LLM models? Do you have a PC with NVIDIA GPUs with CUDA support? Or maybe you have an Apple M3 Ultra or M4 Pro or M4 Max. What hardware do you have available to train or to fine-tune your AI LLM models? Which is a similar list, but where the amount of memory needed is adjusted for the number of parameters in the model to train, and also adjusted for the number of precision in the bits, and additionally adjusted for any quantization if necessary. So something like anywhere from 1x to 2x to 4x the model size for merely hosting. And what are you trying to accomplish? Are you problem solving, data analytics, code generation, image processing and generation, vector embedding? And finally, how is the AI LLM model licensed? So, roughly speaking, Apache 2 is a freer and better license in MIT than is custom. We initially picked a Mistral model, Mistral 7B Instruct, which is purpose-built to be fine-tuned for enhanced performance in instruction following tasks. We also started experimenting with Gemma 12B once we satisfied ourselves that we weren't going to trip over any parts of their custom license. And with the release of the two GPT-OSS models in early August, we have also started training both GPT-OSS 20B and 120B on our clients' data. So this is an interesting point to reflect on. When we started this journey, we heavily favored Mistral. However, as August came to a close, we pivoted and instead leaned in the direction of GPT-OSS. We've also begun testing with the Quinn VL models, as the use cases in those workflows do not make tool calls and do not rely on data related to sensitive topics. So this industry is moving very quickly and models are improving all the time. All right, here are our pieces in play. In our use cases, we are trying to find and then prepare a local model so that it can be used to help our customer interact with their systems. faster, using natural language queries, and with their own data available to it to keep an eye on the compliance and regulation vagaries that currently slow them down and slow their productivity to the average ISS employee, and can also threaten their ability to get reimbursed from New York State Self-Direction Program. And then it helps inform them on how to properly report on compliance and documentation. We did not find any pre-trained models on the New York State Self-Direction Program. And even the largest foundation model we could find only could muster hallucinations about the specifics of that program. So what is the best way to get a model to accurately dialogue with you about any industry-specific rules or regulation, data, or topic? Well, you either fine-tune your model or you build a RAG server. There is not a consensus among experts regarding when to go Route A versus Route B. Instead, there are religious wars on the topic. Not quite as intense as the Mac versus PC wars, but I mention this simply to point out that someone will inevitably disagree with at least one point I am making in the next couple of slides. Fine-tuning a model is ideal when you need the model to internalize domain-specific knowledge, styles, or tasks deeply, making it more efficient and consistent over time without relying on external lookups. It's like embedding expertise directly into the model's brain. So, for instance, if you have domain-specific expertise or complex pattern recognition, or style or tone adaptations you need to make, or a lot of memorization-heavy tasks, or handling rare or specialized inputs, or when the data is static and privacy sensitive. Bottom line on fine-tuning. It shines in controlled environments, but it can be resource intensive, requiring GPUs and labeled data. It is hard work to prepare that data. And you can actually break a model. There are risks like catastrophic forgetting of general knowledge if not done carefully. RAG is perfect for dynamic, context-dependent tasks where the model needs access to up-to-date or vast external information without retraining. It's like giving the model a search engine to pull facts on the fly, reducing hallucinations and keeping response current. So, in situations like real-time or frequently updated information, or knowledge-intensive question and answering, or reducing hallucinations in open-ended queries, scalable personalization without retraining, or cost-effective experimentation. RAG is more transparent. You can trace responses to sources. It's easier to update, and it depends on retrieval quality, but it depends on retrieval quality and can introduce latency if your data set is massive. Bottom line is that there is a lot of overlap in the capabilities of fine-tuning versus building a RAG, and it is more likely that your budget and your timeline has more to do with which route you go than which is empirically the best at a given use case. Furthermore, there are new tools emerging almost on a daily basis that make doing either easier and easier. So which route did we choose? We have actually decided to burn the candle at both ends. There's a growing industry trend towards training a model and building a RAG, and doing so for discrete purposes. This space has generated an intense amount of scrutiny, and diving into this realm is way beyond the scope of this session. So I'm just going to simply say that since we are doing both, here is how we did what we did. Fine-tuning first. So there are a variety of tools and programs available, many of them free, to perform fine-tuning on an existing model. To name a few, Hugging Face Transformers, Unsloth, Label Studio, Keeley Axolotl, Llama Factory, and MLXLM. We have made some progress using MLXLM command line tools, and because we are all on Mac hardware, this is what I'm going to be showing in my demo. To build a model that understands the intricacies of New York State's self-direction program, we took the documents that those programs have developed, called administrative memorandums, or ADMs. We broke them into logical pieces, whether sections or paragraphs, and we generated a question and answer pair. Every model, it turns out, needs this data formatted differently But at the core, the data that you train a model with is essentially in question-answer format. So this took time to generate questions for the answers. And due to the complicated, not yes-no nature of the answers, we wanted to ask several questions for each answer. To start with, we decided that we wanted to end up with 5 questions per answer paragraph. We ended up with over 300 answer paragraphs, which meant that we needed to generate north of 1,500 question records. That was going to be a big task. If only there was a tool we could use to help us generate language faster than any human could. So we turned to Claude. All of the information in the ADMs was in the public domain, so that at this point there was no compliance concerns. Claude generated the 1,500 questions for us in no time. We trained a Mistral 7B model on these question and answer pairs, and we were able to generate better results than we were with the base model. And it didn't take long, however, though, to come across instances where the model really wanted to hallucinate, or at least part of the answer. We felt that the model needed to be additionally trained with more nuanced answers, and not merely restated wording from the ADMs. So back to Claude we went to ask it, given the context of this document, how would Claude answer the following question? And we did that 1,500 times. We fed this into both a Mistral 7B and a Gemma 12B model, and the results were all right, to set the stage on what you're seeing here, I'm going to query an untrained Gemma 3 12B instruct model, and I'm going to ask it a purposefully vague question to demonstrate that without specific training, you get very vague answers. Now, I'm loading the model into a tool called LM Studio, which just puts a nice shiny wrapper on a local LLM, akin to what you would see on a public model like Claude or ChatGPT. And I'm going to ask it, what can you tell me about the self-direction program? As you can see, within the first sentence, the model has already hallucinated a non-existent TLA, calling it SDS, and it is vending out very generic information, most of which does not apply to the New York State program called self-direction, managed by a department called OPWDD. Also note that it is vending out a lot of information, because the term self-direction in a generic sense means so very many things. We're just going to fast forward to the end. But let us pause at the end to enjoy this nugget. That NSDA is in fact, instead, the National Speech and Debate Association, and that URL it hallucinated is actually for sale on GoDaddy. Okay. Before moving on, I'm going to delete my chat session so there's no context for subsequent questions I'm going to ask. Next, I want to show you the data that I prepared. Each question-answer pair needs to be formatted in a JSON-L file, which is an MLX LoRa requirement. And it needs to be nested in this odd tag language, which is a Gemma 3 requirement. I created this top JSON-L to demonstrate the formatting, and then I put some actual question and answer data into the bottom JSON-L line. Each question-answer pair needs to take up only one line and needs to be put into a train.jsonl file and also a valid.jsonl file, which is used to test the quality of the training along the way. So you can see that the process of chopping up your data and turning it into discrete question-answer pairs can be a lot of work. And it is also a little bit of a dark art. Okay, so on to the actual training. We've been using MLX LM command line to train our models. But remember, there are many, many tools available. Many are free, and many are more user-friendly. So I'm going to instruct the MLX LM LoRa subcommand first to train, then to train the Gemma 3 12B instruct model. I'm going to tell it where the data is. I'm going to tell it to iterate over the data 100 times. All right, we're off. It loads that pre-trained model. It loads all of the training data into memory. It calculates a loss rate, and then it begins its iterations and reports every 10 iterations. We can see that after its first iteration, we have a validation loss of 5.676, and we hope to see this decrease as the training progresses. As a diversion, during this extremely boring interlude, it's fun to jump over to your activity monitor or HTOP or task manager and see just how much memory you are consuming. My laptop has 128 gigs of memory, and we are using half of it. It's also kind of rewarding to hear those fans spin up. So it's going to take about 5 minutes to run those 100 iterations on my laptop. So we're just going to speed things up here. Okay, and we're done. We have a validation loss down to 2.350. So I'm going to call that a success. Normally we do 1,000 plus iterations, and I like to see that number under 1. Let's jump to the Finder and show you where the train data sits. It's here in this adapters folder. There are the safe tensors files. From here, we can fuse these files into the pre-trained model to a new fine-tuned model. All right, let's finally jump back over to LM Studio and let's query our new fine-tuned model using the same question as before. And look at that answer. It's short and to a point, like we trained it to be, and it knows that we are talking about the New York State Self-Direction Program, and it's giving answers from the documentation we trained it with. It also knows that the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities is the entity behind self-direction. Okay, that was fun. Let's ask it a follow-up question. What is a broker? This is a very vague generic question, but one that given this context means something very specific. I like that answer. So let's go for one more. How do I sign up for the self-direction program? Boom. Okay, that is a quality, accurate, and practical answer that applies directly to the New York State Self-Direction Program. Okay, that was fun, and it looked like a success. So does that mean we're done and ready to ship out fully automated local LLM SD robots? Not even close. There are a lot of kinks to work out, and we have just scratched the surface here. Besides, it is now time to talk about RAG. Just like with fine-tuning, there are a variety of tools and programs available, many of them free, to build a RAG server. Off the top of my head, there is Anything LLM, Longchain, Ragatui, Haystack, Llama Index, Pinecone, and let's not forget the new FileMaker Server 2025. Some of these are more like dev tools, and some are like fully blown managed platforms. For our purposes here, we decided to use FileMaker Server 2025 because this allowed us to leverage already existing solutions we had built for ISS, and it vastly simplified the process to interact with RAG data. FileMaker 2025 now allows us to host various local LLMs right from the admin console. So for this next demo, we are using a FileMaker file we created to help automate such things as sending and receiving queues, loading certain models, and in this case, an embedding model necessary for loading documents into the RAG, and for displaying the answers. We're using the All-Mini-LM L12 v2 embedding model from Sentence Transformers. The model we are using to handle the queries is GPT-USS 20B, hosted locally by an application called LM Studio. So there are no WAN calls, no internet calls, no data leaves the local area network. So, data preparation. As you are about to see, in our case, there is already a wealth of documentation available to us to load into our RAG. Compliance documentation is nothing but detailed in nature and frequently very thorough. Many RAG tools will allow you to keep the documents in its original format, like PDF or Word or RTF or Markdown, or sometimes even various popular structured data formats. So if you have your key corporate or industry documents already in a somewhat well-organized format, it is possible that you will have minimal data preparation necessary when feeding your RAG. Let me show you. Okay. Unlike with fine-tuning, I want you to see how easy it is to just start working the local LLM talking to a RAG. So first, we are going to locate a document that contains accurate and well-formed data that is relevant for ISS's industry. Yeah, before uploading it though, let's start by asking via a FileMaker window, a local LLM that has been instructed only to consult with the provided documents as context. I'm going to ask it a question specific to the information covered in the yet-to-be-uploaded document. Does OTPS clothing have a dollar cap? If so, what is it? Note the casual way the question was asked, using industry vernacular, not like a structured query. The result? It has no idea. Yet. Let's upload that document to the RAG server, which contains, buried amongst lots of other data, the answer to that question. It is going to import that PDF, create a vector embedding for that document. No additional preparation of data was necessary in this instance. And let us re-ask the same question. Now that it has been provided with this document, it can do the math and find the specific answer. There's the specific answer, and look, it is even showing you the receipts. Boom, and mic drop. So the first thing you are probably noticing here is how easy it is to train this RAG. The second thing I want to call your attention to is, in fact, how easy it is to untrain this RAG. And the third thing to note is that it is much, much easier for a RAG to provide context for its answers. And finally, the tools and programs for adding RAG to your enterprise are kind of out in front of the tools and programs for fine-tuning models in terms of ease of use and approachability. So that was a glimpse into how we set up and are looking to roll out the tools of local LLM and local RAG servers. At the end of the day, as complicated as it seemed to be to set up and utilize those tools, they are just that, tools. A question remains, how do we best use these tools? How do we get these local LLM to interact and integrate with our internal data and systems? There are a lot of good answers to this question, and many of them are very complicated to understand and utilize. In our opinion, one of the best ways to glue all of this together is now one of the easiest ways, thanks to the smart folks at Claris. So I'm going to pass this along over to Paul to introduce you to the FileMaker side of our solution. You want to click the arrow.
Thank you, Matt. For 40 years now, Claris International has had a single mission: to make powerful technologies available to everyone. And they've done this by developing and improving the Claris FileMaker platform again and again. My own career working with FileMaker spans 4 different decades and 6 different employers. And I've worked with this platform as they've added relational database capabilities, web publishing abilities, ODBC connectivity, improved container storage, the web viewer, which allows FileMaker to work with web technologies like JavaScript, also JSON features, SQL queries, API integrations, cloud hosting, scores of new calculation functions and script steps, and now, in the second decade of the 21st century, AI. Truly making powerful technologies available to everyone. Each of these additions to the feature set started small and then grew, and the new AI features are no different. Just this past May, Matt and I presented in Dallas about using the Perform Semantic Find script step, which was new in FileMaker 2024, to find a set of records with vector-embedded files using both public and local private LLMs based on the semantic meaning of the query rather than an exact text match. You can see a video of that presentation on our website. We were asked to come here today to present that same material. Well, we were asked to go to BGL to present that same material again. And then in July, Claris released FileMaker 2025. And we knew, not just Matt and I, but our whole team at Harmonic, that we couldn't just show you last year's technology. So we put a great deal of work into this presentation, again, not just Matt and I, but also a team of 8 other people to show you what we're working on for a real client in a real work environment to solve real world problems, possibly very like the same real world problems that some of you are being called on to solve. Now, I'm not a cutting edge guy, not a computer whiz polymath with expertise in multiple disciplines and technologies. I'm a FileMaker guy. So I brought along Matt to set the stage, explain all about selecting and training models and all that higher level stuff he just told you. He's taken us into the wild blue yonder that is now within our reach, And now it's my job to bring us in for a safe landing on the familiar airstrip that is FileMaker Pro. We'll start with our old friend FileMaker Server. For those who aren't FileMaker folks, FileMaker Server is the software that makes your database, files, and solutions available in local or wide area networks or over the internet. But in 2025, FileMaker Server now hosts next text generation models, text and image embedding models, RAG models, and much more. When you cannot or just don't want to share your vital business data with Google or Elon, you can host your own AI models on FileMaker Server. Another cool feature, and this may be my personal favorite, is the Perform Find by Natural Language script step. I want you to think for a minute how we do this. Oh, okay. Wow, okay.
Just click.
Just click.
Just click down.
All right.
Yeah. Now let's start.
Let's start again. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So this button runs a script that performs a natural language find. So this is going to run a find just based on natural language. So I entered Kenneth to find contacts list whose names were Kenneth, and it's done a find. It found 5 of them. One of them doesn't have an enrollment date. It sorted them, and it just decided to sort them by enrollment date. I could have specified another field to sort by just in the text. Let's try something else. Here we're going to look for Kenneths, but we're going to look for only the ones that were enrolled at some point in the year 2015. So I'm just typing a phrase in there, and there it got me the right answer. Let's take a look at that find criteria. It's 1/1/2015 to 12/31/2015. Again, it sorted it. We'll try one more variation. Show me Kenneth's with any enrollment date. There, it omitted the one that didn't have an enrollment date. Again, we can take a look at that find criteria, and yes, it's sorted by enrollment date. Now, realize it knew which name field to throw Kenneth into. It didn't guess at that. It figured that out. Let's take a look at what that's doing. Here's the Perform Find by Natural Language step. It has a variety of options. It can return the find criteria as a JSON set, or it can actually adjust your found set and display the results of what you asked for. Now, it does use a template, and that's your opportunity to do some prompt engineering. FileMaker does provide a default template text for both the SQL and the find step. I found it useful to add this final line, which gives it direction on how to deal with ranges of dates, because without this, it was using the SQL method of searching for ranges of dates, which doesn't work when you're searching FileMaker data.
Hey, gentlemen.
Yes.
Quick point. Your screens are a little on the fuzzy side. I don't know if there's anything we can do to increase the quality of that.
At this point, I'm afraid there's probably not.
Got it.
But I will certainly
You could
adjust
share a
that for
portion
next
of the
time.
screen, maybe.
And maybe change your screen resolution.
Yeah.
Make it
There's
a little smaller.
only one more short video that's at this resolution,
Yeah.
and then the rest of it should be better.
Got it.
So imagine what we would have had to do to go through those steps if we were doing it without FileMaker. We could have done that with an API. We could have done that and gone through all the steps of building the insert from URL command. But FileMaker is now giving us the ability to do this in a native way. Imagine if you, like me, have clients that have difficulty doing complex finds on complex sets of data. I think the power of this step is just very, very obvious, and I think it could be a game changer for a lot of our users. Perhaps even more cool, though, is this Perform SQL Query by Natural Language script step. This is going to allow us to put in a natural language query FileMaker will do a SQL query based on that natural language request and then execute it. Let's take a look at that. And again, I apologize for the resolution on this. I really should have zoomed in when I made this video. Here we're looking for brokers who have less than 5 participants. Now, I haven't built the schema to support this. The relationships aren't there. The calculated fields are not there, and I have not scripted a SQL query to support this request. But FileMaker is able to, consulting with the LLM, create a SQL query and execute on it and put us on the right layout and give us the right set of records. So let's take a quick look at how we did that. Here's the perform SQL query step. This can give you the query. It can give you the data. In this case, we chose to get the SQL query because what we wanted to be able to do was to be able to change the context and change the found set. So this variable simply identifies what's the proper context based on that SQL query, which layout does it want to go to. This variable executes the SQL query, returns the list of record IDs that are responsive to the query, and then the new go to list of records step allows us to go to the correct layout and the correct found set. Again, it uses a template. Here's the template we've got here. This was worked on by my colleague Eric Clark, and he found some interesting things to do with this. Among them, when preparing the array, we directed it to use a different field to return the record ID rather than the primary key. And also we told it explicitly, only return the correct SQL query. Also at the beginning, we're telling it, find the set of tables that you need to do this query and only use those. We found these really changed the behavior of the results we were getting. So I think this is immensely powerful. This allows our software to do things for our users that we haven't programmed for. And I think that's wonderfully, wonderfully powerful. So what does it look like when we put all of this together? To answer that, I'm going to pass the presentation back to Matt.
Thanks, Paul. So before we close, I'd like to give you a glimpse as to where we're just headed with our project for ISS. So remember, we are in the middle of ironing all of this out. And many of the integrations we were hoping to demonstrate were not ready for prime time when we put this demo together. We did, however, get many things to work, and we are hoping that this will whet your appetite for what is possible. All right, again, sorry for the resolution. That is something we will work on our next presentation. So what if we were to give our local LLM something extra tough to chew on? How well does it perform when asking it to use real-world data against information and rules found in all of this documentation? Remember, we are communicating with a locally hosted AI model, GPT-OSS-20B. Also note that for this demo, we have uploaded all of the current ADM documentation we've been given that applies to this program. So let's give the RAG some context and then ask it the following. I am a self-direction broker. First, remind me how billing works. Then help me answer this question. Today I worked for participant Owen Ellis from 1240 to 1327 and for participant Luca Rask from 1405 to 1430 and then from 1450 to 1456. I'm charging Owen $40 an hour and I'm charging Luca $43.85 an hour. How much money did I make? This is going to require the local LLM to do some math, but not only that, it will require the LLM to know and leverage billing rules contained in the ADM documentation, and specifically billing rules that apply to the SD brokers. So let's see what happens. Note that even though this LLM is local, it will have to chew on this gristle for a decent bit of time. And this is intrinsic to how RAG works versus fine-tuning. And look, we have an answer. Let's see what it found. First, we see a detailed overview of how billing works. Then it walks us through how to calculate the earnings per participant, showing us the math. It also describes how the rules come into play, reminding us that we can only bill in 15-minute increments and that 2 of the minutes are not going to be billable. So, the landscape of all of this is changing rapidly and every single day. It is difficult to keep up with, and we have sunk a ton of hours into understanding what we have shared with you here today. And we feel like we have our minds just barely wrapped around it. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, please talk to us. We would be happy to save you some headaches as you are starting to integrate these new possibilities.
This presentation would not have been possible without the support and help of key individuals at Harmonic, as well as the general support of our whole team.
It's important to note that we used actual intelligence to build this presentation and these demos. So thank you to our team, and thank you specifically to FMDiSC hosts for allowing us to present to you today.
Thank you for joining us today. As I said, it's a pleasure to see so many familiar faces and so many new faces. We're open for questions.
Thanks, guys. Great presentation. One thing I just want to start a quick line of questioning with the advent of so many models and of the ever-changing tools that are coming in. Any special attention as you guys are building applications? Any special attention given? I'm an old audio guy. I always think of I might want to swap out this turntable with a new one, but keep the rest of my system, right? So have you guys given a lot of thought to what if we want to, or we've outgrown this particular model, or we have this new model we want to try? Have you given thought to sort of loose coupling and how you guys integrate new or future versions of tool sets into your applications?
Now, you bet. That is a very interesting and unique to these features, these tech features. It's a very interesting, unique problem, because if what you're trying to do is deliver a product that yields consistent results, switching a model can turn that on its head pretty quick. And so, yes, no, this is exactly what has kind of driven sort of our technique. So in using these question answer pairs and in developing all of this data to train models with, what we've decided to do is store all of those question answer pairs and all of those answers in various versions in a database, of course, FileMaker database, so that we can take model A, model B, model C, train them on the same exact data set. It'll format it, make the model happy how it formats it, but it'll format it in a way that basically gives us as much of a apples and apples and apples as we can. Now, it's not always possible to do that, and some models have a lot of inference data that you need to add, and some don't, like Mistral is pretty simple, versus GPT-OSS and Quinn are a lot more complicated because you need inference instructions in there. But we try to keep it as consistent as possible, and that's part of what we're basing our decisions on, is which models do we think are going to, as they iterate, stay more consistent versus vary wildly. So that, keeping the data and making sure that we train on the same exact data is part of what we're doing along those lines. We are also iterating against as many models as we can, just to start to land on and pick one that we think is going to be consistent. And that's one of the reasons why we left Mistral and kind of went to Google Gemma, because we felt like that trajectory was a little bit more solid. It also comes default in the FileMaker server, and so that might be an easy one for other customers that aren't going to use that might use FileMaker server to host them. It might allow them a little bit easier integration in getting their stuff hooked in. And I think there's a couple of other things we can wander down as far as how we're trying to solve that problem, but it is in fact a very acute issue, and we're aware of that, and we are aware that if this semantic query works using this model, we might need to stick with that model for a while on that data set, because switching it up might start to return different results, and we might need to re-prompt all of that. So.
But if you do make the decision to change models, FileMaker makes it very easy to connect your scripting to that new model. We're storing model names, account names, API keys, all of that in fields. So all you have to do is change the data in the field and just go from one to the other. Any other questions?
I have a second question if nobody else does.
Please.
You know, we're all at the, I think it's just at the tip of the iceberg of AI and where it fits and where it goes and so forth. And you gentlemen have some insights with how you've worked with it and how you've used it with your clients. And one of the things that, pardon me, one of the things that I see is AI. Number one, I want to look at data we've already accumulated and what does it tell us? So the analytical aspect of what we've compiled or collected and give us a story of how that tells. Number two, I'm in the middle of something. I'm doing something. So in the present, so basically in the past, in the present, I'm doing this. What do I need to be aware of? What do I need to think about? As an end user, can AI help me what I'm doing right now, in chat windows or things of that nature? And then the third part is to get out in front. What's the predictive? What do I think is going to happen next in the world or in the future based on the patterns that I've already got right now? Do you guys have any sort of thoughts in that mindset of where you like to see AI being used?
Well, from a FileMaker perspective, I think the first thing I want to see is to use things like the natural language finds and SQL queries simply to make life easier for the users and for the developers. I spent an hour training a non-technical user for the third or fourth time in the time that I've worked with her, how to do complex finds against the data that she's got. She wanted to find people in a particular area, people who had done a particular thing, people who were not dead. And all of these are data points in her database, and I had to teach her, and she was taking copious notes, how to do the complex find she wanted to do to return that. And that perform natural language find should be able to make that a whole lot easier for her. And then, like I said, the idea of the perform natural language SQL query, to be able to return data sets that we haven't even programmed for.
Right.
You can begin to create, your own sort of reports and so forth that nobody's thought of yet that the user would need and be able to respond to that. That's the number one thing I want to be able to see us use AI for. But on down the road here at Harmonic, we're looking at being able to create a chatbot where the users can simply query the chatbot about the data in the database and be able to get accurate answers. And that's a thing we're working on, using the generate response from model step and some interesting UI innovations.
So I think we kind of tipped our hat a little bit about, and answer your question at the end, that last demo, which is there's just so much documentation and compliance in some of these spaces, and some of our clients are just, up to the eyeballs in it. And quite frankly, we find that our customer doesn't even always understand all the ins and outs of it. So when it comes time to documenting something, whether it's a reimbursement or some kind of bill or some kind of medical submission or whatever, when it comes time to documenting it, it's not always in the forefront of everyone's mind all the time, especially not new employees. Is this documentation in the way I've done it going to fly, or are we going to get penalized? And in some cases, the stakes are such that it's not just you documented that wrong, but it's you perpetrated fraud. And so then you've got, an employee who's young, maybe makes a mistake, has their entire company in Dutch because, quite frankly, just something slipped their mind. So to be able to take, a set of records that are about to be submitted and the documentation you can prepare and stick that in a model and basically have that model understand the ADMs and the rules so that it can advise, that would be a huge thing for our customer. And this customer in specific has been begging us to sprint and get us down that road as quickly as possible. And so that is one of the areas where they are really hoping to see that come and yield pretty quick dividends for them. And there's so many other examples I can give, but those are the ones that are forefront of my mind.
Got it.
Chris Moyer,
Hey,
I see your hand.
yeah, Chris.
You do. So at Build, Grow, Learn, you guys showed me, I guess it was, let's call it an anomaly, where you had done a search for Kenneth and Elizabeth, and the search was malfunctioning. It looks like you've cracked that nut, and I was just curious what the issue was and how you fixed it.
I'm actually not sure what that issue was. One of the things I've found is, and part of the reason we made video of the live demos now, is that I'm not always getting the same response for the same query. And sometimes it's not following the template properly or as accurately as I would like. I'm wondering if there's some prompt engineering to be done in that template. But no, I just tried it enough times and recorded it until I got the take I needed.
But
To be perfectly honest with you.
yes, but the prompting has been one of the major keys to basically steer it in the right direction, especially if you're able to develop a pattern of what failed and what it was trying to do. Sometimes, specifically with names, first name and a last name could be the same, right? And so you may want to, instead of just saying, find me everybody with the last, find me everybody whose name is
Evan,
right? That could be a problem, right? So you might need to prompt engineer, or in some cases prompt the user to ask a slightly more detailed question, in which is, I think, how he solved the Kenneth problem and ultimately.
Well, it's interesting because the commonality between both of those names is they have the ETH ending, as do lots of numbers like 20th, 30th, 40th. And so it felt like a tokenization split issue that, could perhaps be a larger thing that we need to sort of think about for database query purposes. But anyway, I just wanted to follow up on that because I noticed you fixed it. So
I agree. That's worth looking at.
One other thing to pop in there as an answer is we did notice that jumping from the OSS GPT 20B to the 120 model, which is a much bigger model, you need a beefier machine to host it. But the answers, of course, as predicted, were just so much more consistent and so much more, and it gave more detail. So, your mileage may vary on models, and if you don't have a lot of hardware to host these bigger models, then you may be stuck with a smaller one. But that 120B is a pretty smart model.
Ian Jemson, all the way from the UK, staying up late to hear our presentation. I'm honored. I see your hand.
Hey, actually, I'm in Vancouver at the moment, so I'm not staying up late for a change.
Then we're ahead of you. Okay.
We're not impressed at all anymore.
Same time zone.
Glad you had a minute. All right.
Actually, that led in really nicely to my question, and that was going to be around choosing the model size, because in general performance, you want to use the smallest model you can get away with. But what you're saying, so it looks like you sort of tried, say, the Gemma, was it 12 or 8B?
The one that we did, was 12B.
The OpenAI 20B, and then you're saying that the 120B gives you better results, which you'd expect. But how did you sort of do that trade-off? Because if you're fine-tuning, you can make the smaller models actually, you can get a lot of the benefits of a bigger model if you fine-tune the smaller model.
You're exactly right.
How did you sort of make that trade-off?
So, I mean, part of the trade-off comes in just trying kind of one of each and seeing what results you get. What I noticed about training the really big models is that you kind of have to throw a lot more data at it to get it to stop making things up where its knowledge ends. And so what we decided to do is get into that 7B, 12B range and throw it that, in our case, it was 1,500 question answer pairs. And that seemed to be a sweet spot. And it was just trial and error, right? I mean, that seemed to be a sweet spot where we liked the model's responses. We liked how minimal the answer was. It wasn't loads and loads of answer. It was just because that's where you start to fall off the edge, right? When it wants to spit out pages, it starts to get kind of crazy there at the end. So we found that our sweet spot with the amount of data we were training with the 7 to 12B range, we started to really like that. And so for training on that documentation, we may actually stick with that. But for a different use case entirely, like a chatbot or a scenario where we're going to be throwing it and wanting it to come up with really good SQL and quality SQL, not made up SQL.
Yeah.
That's where we notice the larger models do a much better job. And it's just, if there was a model that was 12B that was really trained well to just think and answer always in SQL, that might be a good one to play with. That was a smaller size. But what we noticed with the foundation models and just the off-the-shelf models in our testing, the bigger they are, the better the SQL. Kind of just
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the things is that with what you want to do is you've got different purposes, and when you're asking questions about the rules, you want it really tightly bounded to that domain knowledge, and you don't want it talking about anything else other than that specific domain.
yes.
So yeah.
Yep. That
And
you're right. And so that's when I said we were burning the candle at both ends. Instead of coming up with one model to rule them all, what we've really decided to do is, specialize. Find a model, specialize a use case for it, and then use that model for that. So that's part of our solution is a model finder. I'm going to ask this kind of question, or I'm going to query this kind of domain, and so that model finder needs to go find the data and the model and use that only.
Yeah, that's absolutely the way to go. Anyway, awesome presentation. Really, really liked it. Thanks.
Okay, let's do one more question with Will, and then we're gonna get on to the next segment.
Hey guys, really cool presentation. Love to see some of this stuff come into FileMaker. I've been playing around with the open source LLM stuff a little bit and have struggled a lot getting it to load many of my models. Like for instance, you guys brought up the OpenAI OSS GPT. Can't get it to load the GPT OSS models. And I've actually struggled with many of the different kinds of models, and I'm wondering if you guys have run into the same problems.
I'm sorry. Give me load into what?
Like loading the models into the AI services that FileMaker Server is offering.
You're right. Yes. And I think there are probably this is where the non-FileMaker guy is going to maybe. I'll state it as well as I can. We have also had trouble loading GPT-OSS because of the way that is formatted, and FileMaker has kind of a narrow, here's the models that we're going to load, and the way that they're formatted and the way that they're set up, and they load easily, and you kind of have to find those. We were able to actually take our Gemma 12B model, train it, and load it back into FileMaker and use it, and that was great. But taking something like a Quinn or a GPT-OSS, we have not been able to load in there. So that's why we use off to the side, we use other model hosting things like LM Studio and stuff like that. We realize that in some cases we are running in stride with FileMaker and trying to keep up with all the new nifty stuff they're throwing out there. And sometimes we run a little bit ahead of them, and their server just isn't at the point where it can host just any darn thing. And so we're getting there.
Sort of a follow-up question to the same question. If you're using and maybe you covered this, but if you're using the kind of off to the side model hosting for models that FileMaker Server doesn't directly support, are you able to integrate with the FileMaker Pro script steps using that sort of off to the side endpoint?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
If they support the GPT completion, then yes, you can. And so in some cases, like if you're trying to do Bedrock, you really need a middle service because Bedrock doesn't use GPT completions. And so you kind of have to create your own server or find one and host it that changes the completions around so that you can basically talk to and hear a response from those Bedrock models. And in some cases, like LM Studio, we haven't had a big problem with that at all. We've been able to turn on the services that it hosts and just aim it at a different endpoint.
If you go to our website,
Excellent.
harmonic-data.com, go to the events page, look for the May event that Matt and I did, where we talked about the semantic search. You can download the sample file we created where you could put, was using Cohere for part of it, and we were using LM Studio for part of it, and I got it to the point where I could just click a button, go back and forth, but from one to the other, and it would do pretty much the same performance.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks again to the Harmonic guys. Again, this was their maiden voyage on FMDiSC and hit it out of the park. Nice work, and we hope to see you guys attend and love to see other stuff that comes across your desks in the future.
Real honor to be here, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Great. Thanks
Well.
again. Next up, the always lovely and talented Mr. Chris Moyer is going to be doing one of his redoubtable tech news roundups for us. Chris.
Click here.
Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Got it.
Excellent. All right, so welcome to the October edition of the Tech News Roundup. A lot of stuff happened in the last 30 days. Some of it you're going to be like, oh yeah, that happened like 3 or 4 weeks ago. It feels like ancient history. It's crazy. But sort of in the order of relevance to our community, I'm sort of staging things in a certain order. So first up, it's a pretty open rumor now. Apple certainly hasn't contradicted it, but Tim Cook is supposedly stepping down and being replaced by a guy named John Ternus. There's a Fortune magazine article about him that you can see a link to at the bottom if you want to read up on it. Been at Apple for 24 years. University of Penn. The interesting thing that struck me about the Fortune magazine thing is that it called him a former swimming champ, and I'm a former swimmer, so I'm like, oh, cool, he's a swimmer. So I looked it up, and this is what the blurb in the Fortune magazine article said, that his athletic prowess when he won both the 50 free and 200 free at a swimming competition. So I pulled up the linked article, and it's basically a report about a dual meet against Swarthmore, where Swarthmore was so outmatched, they lost every race but one. And so all the swimmers were swimming not their regular events just to sort of practice. And so he won his 2 events. And then it said he's an all-time letter winner, and that information was taken from a list at Pennsylvania that said, here are all our all-time letter winners. And he swam his freshman year and then never swam again. And so he's just on the all-time list of all letter winners, not that he swam a record number of times or anything like that. So I thought the Fortune magazine coverage was a bit shoddy, but anyway, all that aside, strong tech guy. He was a mechanical engineer by training. He's had involvement in every generation of iPads, the latest iPhone lineup, the AirPods. He had a central role in the Mac transition to Apple Silicon. So the guy's been around for quite a while, been heavily involved in a lot of the technical shifts that Apple has gone through. Apple PR has been putting the spotlight on him. He's had a fairly prominent role during the most recent keynotes. I think that this last one, he did the new iPhone Air. And he's been working on product roadmaps, features, strategic decisions, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the new Tim Cook. It remains to be seen how that plays out, but new blood is a-coming. And then doesn't this feel like ancient history? I mean, this got announced back in like September 17th or something like that, and everybody freaked out at the time, and now this feels like old news to me, at least. So Trump has decided that anybody who wants to be on an H-1B visa is going to have to pay an annual fee of $100,000. Trump tried to do something similar in his first administration, and a lot of people are freaking out, especially the medical community, because apparently H-1B visas are commonly used to get doctors into rural hospitals because regular doctors with huge medical debt can't afford to work there. So advocacy groups representing healthcare and education employers have already sued over the new $100,000 fee, arguing it exceeds presidential authority. The AMA and 53 medical societies on September 25th sent a letter to Kristi Noem. We urge the administration to categorically consider H-1B physicians' entry into the U.S. to be in the national interest of the country and waive the new application fee so that H-1B physicians can continue to be a pipeline that provides health to U.S. patients. So anyway, even though this has happened weeks ago, the process is still in its very early stages. Department of Homeland Security is expected to release a full draft of the new regulations for public comment in the coming months. So this is a months-long process. Once the notice and comment period closes, DHS can then issue a final version, potentially affecting the next H-1B filing cycle. But if these legal challenges are still going on, that could delay or block the implementation of this new set of rules. And I guess that's all I got on that. I thought I had another point on that, but I guess not. Microsoft reacted immediately. They had people all over the world, like out on vacation, stuff like that. And as soon as this, I think it was tweeted out, they advised all their H-1B and H-4 visa employees to return to the United States immediately ahead of the September 2021 deadline, which was an illegal deadline. By the way. They being Microsoft, advised their H-1Bs that are currently already in the U.S. to continue working in the country for the air quote foreseeable future. They should stay in the U.S. Also recommend H-4 visa holders remain in the U.S. Strongly recommend H-1B and H-4 visa holders return to tomorrow before the deadline. So this was a memo that Microsoft sent out in something of a panic. Okay, shifting gears a little bit. Meta did a demo. They did a live AI demo, and this was back in September 17th. And their demo didn't work well. So, oh, I forgot to, I did my transition wrong. So I have the overlay on the back. In the background there, you see an influencer trying to make, I think, Korean barbecue, it was. And so he was asking Meta AI to assist him in the recipe. And then what happened was he said, "Hey Meta, start live AI," and him saying that, announcing it to the entire audience, kicked off, tried to start Meta AI, and they effectively DDoSed themselves. And so it didn't work. So he's asking about how to make Korean steak sauce, I guess it was. And then he said, "What do I do first?" And so he started with sort of one line of question and then switched to this secondary question, "What do I do first?" And it was this ability to interject and speak more fluidly to an AI as you would to a human being, which has been a focus of voice technology for the last couple of years. And it's something that OpenAI touts about its voice mode. Apple improved with Siri last year. Amazon has added it to Alexa Plus. So Meta absolutely felt like they had to respond. So, however, since they had just DDoSed their server, the AI got tripped up by the interjection, did not register what the influencer said, so he repeated it. When the AI finally responded, it inaccurately assessed that he'd already combined some ingredients which he had not touched and said, "You've already combined the base ingredients, so now grate a pear to add to the sauce." Anyway, it did not go well. I feel for Meta and the person as someone who's had demos go belly up, but it was just sort of an interesting thing. Qualcomm has bought Arduino. So for those of you not familiar, Arduino is a single board computer manufacturer similar to the Raspberry Pi. It's an Italian company. But this was announced on the Reuters did an announcement, and the lower link there is the announcement on the Arduino website itself. Companies did not disclose the price of the deal. Qualcomm said Arduino will retain its independent brand, tools, and mission. The platform is widely used by high school and university students worldwide to learn how to build and program electronic devices. It's also used by professional engineers to do rapid prototyping. Interestingly, the software and hardware is compatible with chips from a range of providers, including Qualcomm, but not just Qualcomm. And the two firms have said they will continue to support chips from other chip vendors. They also said they will introduce an Arduino development board powered by one of its Dragonwing processing chips that will be suitable for devices such as robots that need computational power similar to a computer or phone, along with real-time control over wings, wheels, or other robotic elements. The chip maker Qualcomm said it will be the first board to work with a new coding tool called AppLab, aimed at helping Arduino developers bridge the gap between coding languages used in robots and those used in more complex artificial intelligence systems. So if you sort of digest all of that in its entirety, this looks like a robotics play. You know, NVIDIA has gotten into its own robotics tooling kit and stuff like that, and Qualcomm was just a chip maker. And so now this seems like a way for them to move into more of the infrastructure for robotics, which makes a ton of sense to me. So I think as long as they don't kind of ring fence the thing and force people to only use their chipsets, that this should be a good thing for everybody, including Qualcomm. So interesting move on their part. There's the picture of their Arduino Dragonwing. All right, for this one, I want to call special correspondent Bob Shockey, who actually had a client who got clipped by this one. Bob, you want to jump in?
Sure. We got contacted by a client who we don't do a lot of work for them. We hadn't heard from them in a while. And they reached out to us and said, hey, we got ransomware. And do you happen to have a copy of our database with our data in it? Which we did, but it was from January. So, and this happened very recently. So we were able to help them, not as much as we would have liked to have helped them, but I guess it was a big thing for them to have at least that. But the way that they were attacked, ransomware, was through a IT heavy, IT focused, remote connection software called Screen Connect, made by a company called ConnectWise, I believe. And I guess there's been a lot of this going on. There's some kind of exploit, or maybe more than one exploit available with this software, which I think by now they've shorted up, but the damage is done. I feel bad for the IT company. It's actually an IT company that we've worked with several of our clients, and they're no slouches. It's not like it's amateur hour with them or anything. It's just that they were, caught off guard by this thing. And turns out, if you do a search on ConnectWise and malware on Google, you will find quite a bit of information about it. But their official statement on it was that they were compromised by a sophisticated nation-state actor. Now, where they're getting that from, how they know that, and what it's based on, I have no idea. But this is a thing that maybe if you're working with any IT companies, which probably a lot of you are, you might want to mention this to them. Once again, the software is called Screen Connect, and just kind of give them a heads up, make sure that they're up to date with any patches or anything that are involved with it, because it's there's only one thing I think worse than getting ransomware, and that's having your IT provider be the one who it came from and therefore cannot support you in recovering from your ransomware right when you need them. So pretty bad situation all around.
Years ago, we had a client get ransomware, and by sheer dumb luck, we had just taken a copy of the database like 2 weeks earlier. And so we were able to save them, and they just had to reproduce 2 weeks of data. But I mean, ransomware is getting more common, not less. And I almost think it's our civic duty to take regular backups of client databases, or shove them in the cloud or something. Certainly let them know that you're doing it, but protect them on the off chance that they get completely obliterated by a ransomware attack and you have the only copy. So You know, there are obviously privacy issues and things like that there, but you know, at the very least, you know, set them up with like an S3 bucket on Amazon or something like that that they own and control, and get it off their network so that they're not left completely holding the bag when something like this happens. I just feel like it's one of those things that's gonna happen sooner or later, and so you should help them be ready for it.
It's
Anyway,
and ourselves too, right?
yeah, and us too, absolutely. Yeah,
It is an ongoing problem that you're right that it's getting more, not less. And you know, the figures that I found online are wildly different, anywhere from 45% to 85% of companies attacked by ransomware are small businesses, small to medium businesses, I think, really. So, you know, make up your own mind on what that means, but it's a lot.
yeah,
And you know, I think, you know, some of the things that are good for protecting you from this, you know, any kind of air gap you can create, you know, using some offsite server or AWS server, and then maybe immutable backups in a separate
yes,
container on AWS is a really good idea too, to keep your, you know, because you might have a big repository of your client's data that you're saving for them, and then you might get hit. And, you know, one thing to consider about doing that is that they're not just ransomwaring now, they're also grabbing data, you
yeah,
know,
and
anything
extorting.
unencrypted that they can hang on to and, you know, extort you, you know, hey, we're going to go after all of your customers and their data and their customers too if you don't, you know, pay us. So it's pretty malicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for that um, story, I guess. Speaking of nation state actors, my very next slide was talking about how this is a Chinese state-sponsored threat activity group. They're called Red November. They were identified by a cybersecurity firm called Recorded Future. In the 12 months between July 2024 and 2025, um, they were targeting high-profile organizations globally, government, defense, aerospace, other industries. And so, Bob, I don't know what your client is, but if they have any sort of, you know, part in the supply chain of any defense industry, then they would be a target. You know, they don't have to be a big company to be on that target list. You know, we have a client who makes like a tiny little component of secure government systems, and they would totally be a target. And, you know, I don't know how hard their attack surface is, but they should keep a weather eye out as it is. Um, for initial access, the Red November has been compromising edge devices from Cisco, F5, Fortinet, Palo Alto Networks, SonicWall, Sophos. As part of the attacks, they deployed a Go-based backdoor dubbed Pantagana. I guess it's pronounced Pantegana. Pantagana. I guess that's it. Um, they used offensive security tools such as Cobalt Strike and SparkRat and open source tools for initial access, reconnaissance, and follow-up activities. They are known for using that Pantagana as its command and control framework, along with Cobalt Strike. They also continue to rely on ExpressVPN for server management. So those are sort of the fingerprints of this group. Should you get hit, or should your customer get hit? This was sort of an odd story out of New York. Um, they say they found this huge SIM network. There's a huge number of SIM cards all under the control of a single operation. They said it could have disabled cell phone towers and essentially shut off the phone network in New York City. Could be used to overwhelm cell towers. It says this network was capable of sending approximately 30 million text messages per minute, meaning it could anonymously text the entire United States in around 12 minutes. So the source tells Wired that the Secret Service has confirmed that the SIM farm was used by organized crime, nation-state threat actors, and other individuals known to law enforcement. This is what it looked like. I thought this was kind of an interesting thing. So they basically have these racks with little SIM cards in them and a whole bunch of cell antennas. And so it's very tidy and everything. It has carpeting and just regular metal racks for it. But that's what a sim farm looks like. And then I saw this piece that said, hey, that sim farm story is bogus. There are lots of legitimate reasons to have something like this. So supposedly the backstory is that a Secret Service investigation into threats sent to politicians via SMS messages led them to this facility. The perpetrator used one of the spam farms to mask their origin. When they traced back the message using radio triangulation to find the mobile phones, they found the SIM farm. For decades now, when the New York Times has a cybersecurity story from anonymous government officials, they quote James A. Lewis to confirm it. This guy used to work for Center for Strategic and International Studies, but apparently has changed employers recently. And so whenever you look for or you see New York Times cybersecurity stories, look at for that relationship with James Lewis. When you see anonymous government officials and him quoted in the New York Times story, you are seeing government propaganda. So they're basically saying he's carrying water for some sort of narrative that they're trying to sell. So I thought that was an interesting sort of sequence of events all about this sim farm that, could have legitimate uses. If you are a marketer trying to, I don't know, send out coupons so you could get a free burrito or something like that, you would want to avail yourself of a service like that. Anyway, burritos aside, speaking of government people, so this guy, Dale Britt Bendler, is a 68-year-old ex-CIA officer. He leveraged his position as a contractor to access and sell sensitive information for personal gain. Court documents revealed that he treated classified systems as if they were his own personal Google, accessing data to fulfill requests from a U.S. lobbying firm and foreign nationals. Those actions not only compromised national security, but also raised ethical questions surrounding the conduct of former officials in similar roles. He had a national security career in the CIA. He retired in 2014 and then re-entered the agency as a contractor, so that preserved his access to these systems. And so he monetized confidential information, and he was accused of providing details to clients involved in contentious legal battles and visa procurements. So this was an interesting thing. So apparently, not just one VPN, but a whole bunch of VPNs. 16 VPNs in the UK were labeled as highly problematic by technical experts. A small number of companies control a disproportionate share of the VPN market through white label solutions. The study identified 8 highly problematic VPN providers with 16 applications and a total of over 700 million downloads in the Google Play Store that conceal their connections to each other. The applications distributed by these providers contain privacy and security issues that put users at risk of surveillance. Among the apps labeled as highly concerning are Turbo VPN, VPN Proxy, Master, XYVPN, and 3XVPN, Smooth Browsing. Each one of those had been downloaded 100 million times from the Google Play Store. Both sets of providers use the Shadow Socks tunneling protocol, which is not designed for confidentiality, to build the VPN tunnel and claim their users' connections are secure. Who owns, operates, and develops your VPN matters. So here's sort of the nut of this. Oh, great, I have a third-party ad content thing on there. So once the payload got installed, they started intercepting their financial transactions, and people have lost money. So bad things happened. All right, I think we got all that. Let's see, Jaguar Land Rover. So this is an interesting thing. They got hacked. They were cyber attacked, shut down production, left their suppliers facing collapse because they couldn't operate and take shipments. And apparently they were still finalizing insurance coverage when the hackers broke into the system. And so as a result, since they did not have coverage, they are basically eating the cost. So it's they lost 3.5 billion in revenue, 250 million in profit. And they're left holding the bag on those losses. So their lack of insurance was first reported by an industry journal, The Insurer. They were in talks with insurance broker Lockton, but nothing had been finalized. So they got clipped. So the moral of the story is if you don't have cyber insurance coverage and you get hit, you're toast. The losses are your own. Shifting gear a little bit, this is really hard to read, so let me switch to a clearer representation of this. If you take a look at this, this was presented by Sam Altman at their recent event, and they were showing off people who are heavy users of OpenAI. So they had a list of people who'd done 10 billion tokens, 100 billion tokens, and 1 trillion tokens. And if you look at the 1 trillion section across the top here, who is this sixth name here? And these are in alphabetical order, not in order of consumption. So Chris Hippolyte is in the 1 trillion token club with OpenAI, and I just thought that was interesting. Someone had done a meta-analysis of all these users, and they're trying to sort of work out what are the implications of this, given the different industries that these people are in. And so they came up with over 70% of ChatGPT usage is non-work, which means advice, planning, personal writing. These 30 firms, meaning these top names in green here, maybe building the systems behind that life level intelligence. Every previous tech shift had this moment, the web's traffic wars, Google and Amazon emerged, the mobile download wars where Instagram and Uber emerged. And so this chart shows 4 archetypes, they call it, which I think is a bit much, but hey. So first one is AI native builders creating reasoning systems from scratch like Cognition, Perplexity, Cider AI. AI integrators, established companies layering AI onto existing workflows like Shopify and Salesforce. AI infrastructures, dev tools building the foundation like Warp.dev, JetBrains, Datadog, and then vertical AI solutions applying intelligence to one domain like Abridge, Whoop, or Tiger Analytics. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting and a familiar name in the list there. This just got announced, yesterday? So this is Figure 03. They are a humanoid robot maker. They had tons of videos on their website. You should go check this out, Figure AI/Figure. They just released the Figure 3 humanoid robot. They have 3 target markets for it. Mass manufacturing, so this could work on an assembly line. The home has several new features, including soft goods, wireless charging, improved audio system for voice reasoning, battery safety advancements that make it safer and easier to use in a home environment. And then something called Helix, which is a completely redesigned sensory suite and hand system, which is a proprietary vision language action AI. So if you have some sort of custom application, I don't know, maybe bomb disposal or something like that, it enables you to program a suite of behaviors to fulfill a specific specialized task. So interesting stuff. Check it out. Shadow AI, you've probably all heard of Shadow IT. Shadow AI is a similar type of thing where someone is bringing AI into the workplace on the sly. It's not an official thing or it's not part of their regular job description. And so now they have a tool from Netscope that can track Shadow AI and find out if it is being used within the organization. So just sort of an interesting thing if someone has like HIPAA compliant environment or something like that, or works in research and has trade secrets and whatnot, there's a way to sort of try and get a handle on this so that stuff doesn't leak out. And then this is a new feature for the tech news this month. I'm going to have a tip of the month for AI stuff. So I thought this was a good one. Um, so this is, I found this on Reddit actually, Reddit username prompting pixels. They said they were playing around with Nano Banana and realized that instead of making iterative changes and constantly changing the prompts, you can make several precise edits in one pass. And so it's hard to see here, but they drew a red box with the text, make her eyes open. They drew a red box around this woman's head, have her wearing a hat, drew a red box around this drink and said, change this to an ice cream cone. And those are the 3 edits. And so they took that photo into an image editor, drew the red boxes around it, and described what changes they want. And then they prompted with the words, read the red text in the image and make the modifications, remove the red text and boxes. And then this was the result. And so a sort of single pass complex image edit became pretty simple by using this tip. So I don't know how many Nano Banana users we have here, but for those of you who are doing image manipulation, I thought this was a great tip. And then my last slide here, this is just something, this is actually an old story, but I thought it was really cool. So I'd share it with you guys. So this is about hero rats. So these rats were changed to detect tuberculosis. And so this is a TB detection rat. And it can detect 100 sputum samples for tuberculosis in as little as 20 minutes. This would typically take a regular human lab technician up to 4 days using conventional microscopy. I can't speak today. So tuberculosis is the biggest global killer from an infectious disease after COVID-19. There were approximately 10.8 million new cases of TB per year, and around 1.3 million died from the disease in 2023. In most sub-Saharan African countries, only about half the patients with active TB are diagnosed. And so this is a backup process. They have labs in Africa, and they take the lab samples and retest them with the rat. And they have actually, by doing so, they have improved clinic detection rates by 40%. So when they do that, they will notify the clinic and say, hey, the rat called you out. And anyway, I just thought it was a really cool story with the rat eating his goodies and finding TB. What a job. Anyway, that is it for the Tech News Roundup.
Thank you, Chris. That was fantastic. Always a favorite. We're going to break off and go into our breakout rooms for a little bit of break. Hope to see you guys back in about 15 minutes. And then we'll come back with our announcement section, which we have some pretty exciting things to share today. So thank you. I'm going to pause the recording and go hang with your cohorts. We're going to have, we have, I think, a number of people that have some announcements today, the folks from Full Access. And then, yeah, so Eric, I think you were going to grab the mic for that. And then Lynn's going to have some FMDiSC, relatively significant housekeeping type of announcements for the rest of us. Eric, did you want to?
Oh yeah, can I
Yeah,
go and
no,
share
all
screen
you.
then? Share this. Let's see. You guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what Dig FM had its usual meeting yesterday, but we're going to have an extra meeting on October 21st at 3 p.m. And on that panel, we're going to have Vince Manano, Ron Glenn Cates, Mike Ross, and we're really fortunate to have Rick Kalman. He's going to be our Claris platform epidemiologist. So, and let's see what else we got. Oh yeah, so it's essentially going to be a developer meeting about developer meetings and anything else that falls into our epidemiological ecosphere. I'm going to kick off the conversation with a risky experiment, as if we're a conference of mad scientists designing lab viruses and social engineers trying to maximize the spread of those viruses into the population. I think the strategies involved are applicable, so we're going to be kicking off with that, and then we'll be thinking along the lines of these various items here that you see on the screen, how we're going to, how can we improve the way we spread these ideas, just like we've seen today at FMDiSC here. And then John wanted me to announce the registration for the developer conference in Los Altos in California is technically closed, but we have 5 half-price seats available, but only until Monday, October 13th. When it closed, registration was $14.95, but right now you can get this for half price. Those 5 seats are available for $7.50 each, and it includes lodging and food for 3 days and nights. So you could probably just show up and not even go to the session. That's like a pretty good price. It's up in the Los Altos Hills, and we got good weather up here. It's pretty close to where I live. And anyone interested, all you have to do is email John and me, and one of us will pick that up and make sure that you get in. And that's it for me.
Excellent. Anyone else from the group, any specific announcements before I hand this over to Lynn?
Okay. Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
I have some interesting, slightly sad news. At the end of the year, Chris Moyer will be stepping down from the board, but he has assured us that he will continue to provide his tech news roundups and attend and participate in the group. I was going to let Chris talk about what's next for him and kind of how he feels about his time on the board. Chris?
I didn't realize I was going to do a speech here. Yeah, so Heidi and I are focusing on AI as sort of a strategic area for us. And so we're really, we've been going to conferences. We're going to do one probably next week, I think. And it's a lot to keep, as Ian could testify to, it's a lot to keep up on. There's stuff happening every single day. It's crazy. And so just trying to stay on top of that requires pretty much a full-time focus. So that's what's next. Enjoyed my time here and working with the board, but I need to need all my time to stay on top of the new stuff. So that's kind of where I am.
Thank you. Well, we thank you for your time with us. You've brought innovation, new ideas, new perspectives that has been really valuable, I think, to the group and the board. So thank you from all our hearts. Anytime you want to come back, let us know.
Thank you.
But here's the good news that I have is that since we have decided to expand the board permanently, as of this month, our newest board member is Elizabeth Swenson. And I'm very pleased and honored to announce that she'll be joining us. Many of you know Elizabeth. She's been around FileMaker for a long time and is well known in the community. She's been very active in Women Innovating Together, including being a fundraising person for them. That's done a great deal of good. So we're happy to welcome her, and you'll be seeing much more from her in the future as we bring her on board and welcome her happily. So that's my announcement.
Excellent, excellent. We were running a bit late, but I was talking with Sol, and I think we have enough time. I think we're going to be fine. We've got probably a good 35 minutes or so, and then we'll bring Jeremy in. So, in any event, our next segment is really going to be, kind of learning a little bit more about new board member. We've got obviously first, by the way, completely applaud, and we were thrilled to bring Elizabeth on, and super great having her as just a continuity of great smart minds and interesting thoughts and so forth. She's already behind the scenes. She's been involved with us for a few months and already been very substantively adding to our insights and some of the offerings we're doing. So we're really thrilled to have her. So Sol Rodriguez is our newest announced board member prior to Elizabeth, and I just thought it would be really a great time to sit with him a bit and give you guys a little bit of backstory, a little behind the scenes, a little what makes him tick, and how did he come about into our little community and so forth. So this is going to be Sol and I sitting down and talking just for a few minutes. Sol, you good? Okay, over there, audio.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, so a little backstory. Hey, I was born here, grew up here, blah blah. What's your background?
So I'm from California. I was born in Fresno, California, and I started playing music early on. And so I had this daydream of, coming down to LA to play music. Um, but I did pretty well in school. So I got offered, an opportunity to go to a couple of the different UCs, a couple different schools. And I was originally considering going to Santa Barbara to study physics. So my other choice was somewhere in LA because I really wanted to follow music, and I'll make this short, but it's a funny story. So I got invited for like a 3 or 4 day weekend to stay in Santa Barbara at UCSB and check it out, kind of get a vibe of the campus and what it was like. And that weekend happened to be a very foggy weekend. And at the time, I had really big, long hair. I mean, it was literally down to my waist. And I have a funny picture I can probably pull up here. I didn't think I was going to give this story, so I didn't prep it. But I ended up going out to Santa Barbara for the weekend, and my hair was so big due to the fog. I mean, it was literally like this. I would turn my head and then it would turn afterwards. And I just thought, I can't live this way. I need to go to LA and play music. That's where my heart is anyway. So I ended up in LA, went to school there. Um, and fast forward all the way, and we'll go back to how I got into FileMaker, but all the way to the first day that I went to FMDiSC. I thought this was kind of a fun story. I don't know if you remember me telling you this story, Dave, but what's that?
Guys, can we mute? I don't know who that is.
So I ended up,
Jeremy.
yeah.
Go ahead. You're good.
So yeah, bring the hair back. I see that in the comments. So I ended up going to FMDiSC, and at the time I had just kind of gotten started with my first real grown-up job. And and as is the case for a lot of people, I had been previously exposed to FileMaker, but I wasn't an expert by any means. And they kept asking me, "Hey, can you do this? Can you do that?" And I kept thinking, "Well, I think I can do it in that FileMaker program. Let me see if I can check it out." And I kept having success with that, but I really didn't feel very confident in my FileMaker skills. So I asked if I could go to FMDiSC. I found FMDiSC online, and the first day that I went, I showed up, and I'm thinking like, you know, I had previously enjoyed FileMaker, and I just thought I don't know if I could really make a living, doing FileMaker. So I kept going in my Microsoft world at the time. But when I showed up, I saw this blue BMW that said DB Dude on the license plate. And I thought, you know what? Somebody's making a living doing FileMaker, and they've got this nice blue BMW. Much later, come to find out that was your blue BMW.
Guilty. Yeah. I'm sorry about that.
So that was kind of a fun first, even before I walked into the room, kind of introduction to the opportunities that exist in FileMaker. But so that's a little bit of background. Generally, I kind of hinted there that I do play music. We can talk about some of that. I can talk a little bit more about.
Are you still you still play? Obviously,
Yeah.
I see the studio behind you, the piano, the stack of guitars, the Hammond B3.
Yeah.
Are you still playing?
I am. In fact, my original band, I have two bands. One's original, one is a cover band. My original band just finished our fourth CD. We just finished the mastering last week, and I'm super excited to release it within the next couple weeks. So we just have to plan our marketing strategy, whatever. But yeah, it's kind of 90s rock. Like if you mixed Lenny Kravitz, Black Crowes, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Pearl Jam kind of all together. That's kind of where we live.
Hmm.
It's very digestible, very kind of melody centric, vocal centric. It's easy. Most people find it's very, easy to listen to. It's something that you would hear on the radio. It's not extreme in any direction really. Um, but a lot of guitar stuff on there, which is kind of fun because, these days you don't hear a lot of guitar solos and stuff. So if you're a fan of guitar solos, you'll dig. The name of the band is Greenleaf Avenue. But
Nice. Let's on the FMDiSC list. Let's get a link to the album once fully released and
yeah, that'd
all
be
that sort of
fun.
stuff. Yeah, it'd be fun to see that.
We don't
It's
have.
really
Yeah.
interesting too, Sol. In our community, obviously, I came from the recording industry. Lynn on our board, she is a beater. If you talk to Rosemary, she is a yarn and a knitting and a weaver. There are so many people in our community that come from creative backgrounds. I'm looking at Dina Torok right here. She's a longtime singer and choir member and so on and so forth. So again, it's such an amazing thing. I think you see a lot of people in other technology platforms that are, just of the pure geek ilk. And so many of our people in the FileMaker space really do seem to come from creative backgrounds or have that integrated in their lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, I missed a lot of. I hear stories about the not FMDisk, but the uh, the DEF CON days when they had
The
bands or,
bands,
or
yeah, yeah,
FileMaker guys get up there. But I
yeah.
did a pause and error session one year where I was a speaker, and just out of curiosity, I asked, how many musicians are in the room, and literally about 75% of the people raised their hands. I was just blown away.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is something about the creative itch that gets scratched in FileMaker, and I'm super thankful for it because I think it's one of the things that really helped me to stay motivated in the tech world. If it wasn't for the creativity that I got to kind of express through FileMaker, I think I probably would have burned out on servers and all the fire drills that happen on that side.
Right. Um, when you got started in FileMaker, what are some examples of your early days, your early apps that you started? Oh my God, I built a little time entry thing, or I built a catalog to keep track of my guitars, or what are the things that you would find yourself starting to build when you were in your earlier days of development?
Yeah. So my first, I, I I had a job in Fresno with Fresno State College, and I was supposed to keep track. This is out in a little rural town in a little rural junior high school. I think there was 5,000 people in this town, um, and so Fresno State kind of had a an extension program out there to kind of help support that community and kind of grow them in their technology. So I was out there and they wanted me to keep track of the students and how they were progressing, over the years. And I had no idea how to do that. And so somebody said, well, why don't you try this FileMaker thing? We've got a free license through the university. See if you can come up with something. And I literally went to, I don't know what it was at the time, probably Barnes and Noble or something, bought a book and just started going through it. And it was so accessible. Um, that I just really started having fun. And after having studied I'm a Microsoft certified systems engineer originally. That's kind of how I got into that world of technology. After all the technicalities, of that kind of approach to technology, it was just so refreshing. So I had a blast working with FileMaker. Now, at the time, I had no idea what I was doing. That this was way before YouTube or anything like that. So I didn't have any relationships. This was FileMaker 7, even though I had read that, you know, in different places. I think I had FileMaker magazine, or FileMaker
Yeah,
Advisor magazine.
that's right.
Yeah. Um, and I had read that, 7 had introduced um, relationships, and I had no idea what a database relationship was. So I just really built a one-dimensional, you know, database, but it looked cool, because I was able to at least have a GUI that I put to it. It wasn't just a spreadsheet. And when I presented it to my bosses and everything, they thought it was the coolest thing ever. So
Wow.
I actually they recommended me to a couple of other programs in a couple of other cities, and I was able to moonlight, not knowing what I was doing, building one-dimensional FileMaker databases without any relationships, making side cash doing that. And I thought This is really cool. There's something going on here. Now, it wasn't until I got the next job down in LA, because at that point I moved to LA, moved back to LA. I had gone to school in LA, and then I had moved to Fresno. So part of my story is that when I was in LA playing music, at some point I moved back and got married. Um, and and it wasn't too long before my wife got cancer and ended up passing.
Mm.
So in the midst of that, a lot of changes happened in my life, and I was kind of, going back and forth. Um, but when I moved back to LA and got a new job, they were actually looking for a developer, and I wasn't a developer in any sense, and I had barely had that, one-dimensional experience with FileMaker, and they kept asking me if I can do X, Y, and Z, and I kept thinking in the back of my head I could probably do it if I had that FileMaker program. So I talked them into buying me FileMaker. And the first application that I really did was this program. It was actually pretty sophisticated when I go back and think about it. That took a bunch of history. This is for a medical billing program, and I've been in medical billing ever since. This was starting in 2024, so it's been 21 years in the medical billing industry. So I'm very familiar with HIPAA, all of the compliance issues that go with that. And the whole time, FileMaker has really been the standout tool that I've used to kind of grow, and we can talk about that path and now I'm a vice president of research and development in a 15,000 person organization. But in the meantime, at this first job where I was using FileMaker, the tool that I built was basically tracking charges, medical billing charges that went through but never got paid. And so I was able to export data from our medical billing software, and the software itself didn't have the capability to do this, but I was able to, in FileMaker, put together something that would show CPT codes that never actually ended up getting paid. And so it was a big deal for my
That's
bosses.
a huge revenue stream. It's free money at that point, right? For an organization like that.
Yeah, because they were able to figure out what was going on and chase after those. And then what we ended up doing was we would start to see patterns. Oh, the CPT code, 99999, which is not a true code, hasn't been getting paid by Blue Cross for the past month. There's a pattern here, and let's go chase after Blue Cross and tell them we found out that you're doing this, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, we get, a huge influx of money coming in. So it made me very popular very quickly at this new job that I had, which originally they were hiring a developer. I told them I wasn't a developer, and I didn't get the job. So they actually hired somebody else who was a developer who lied on their application and in their interview about their citizenship. They actually weren't a citizen. And so they ended up realizing that, hey, we can't trust this guy. They let him go pretty quickly. And then they called me back and they said, hey, we know that you don't do development, but you did really well in the interview. We'd like to give you a shot. And been doing it ever since.
Wow, that's such a great story. As we get more experienced in the craft of the development and so forth, everybody we've got a team of people here. We've got a collection, a community of people in front of us, and we hear different stories about how people work. What's your approach? I mean, what do you see yourself? Like, I'm somebody who just starts building stuff, or I really like to sit down and map out a workflow, or what do you see as your style for sort of discovery, design, development, deploy? How do you tend to orchestrate that? What's a crow's eye view looking over your shoulder, from the beginning of an app to the end of an app with Sol Rodriguez? What does that look like?
So I'll talk about two things, the way I kind of started and kind of where I'm ending up.
Yeah.
Because I always look at these projects as something fun and creative. I tend to probably, and also because I've been a solo in-house developer by myself for the last 21 years. And I do get, some influence from FMDiSC and DEF CON and other places. But ultimately, I haven't really had a mentor, to say, hey, you should do these things or watch out for these things. I've made all the mistakes and I'm probably still making a bunch of them. And one of them that I think I've made from the beginning that I still do is I just get excited about the project because
Yeah.
of the creative nature of it. And I just start kind of jumping in. And then I'll go back and realize, okay, think I need to plan this out a little better.
Oh, there's a thing called a relationship that I need to factor in. Yeah.
I remember the first time I discovered Anchor Buoy, which just blew my mind because I was having these problems with with relationships early on because of my nature of jumping in and just trying to throw some tables together and create relationships. And I posted on some, I don't remember what it was. It was some FileMaker forum, what my problem was, and somebody rudely, but I'm very thankful for their rude comment, said, well, if you just used Anchor Buoy, you'd never have a problem like this. Like, you know, I don't know. It wasn't a helpful comment in the way that they put it, but I went online, and at this point there was some internet availability. So I went online and searched up Anchor Buoy, and I finally figured out, that Anchor Buoy in the context of FileMaker was this thing. And once I, started getting introduced to concepts like that, I realized, okay, I need to do a little bit more planning and figure it out. Well, I've created myself a template that's loosely connected or loosely based off the selector connector implementation.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily use it for selecting, but I do tend to start with a preferences table um, in every database that I create, and every single new table always has access to that preferences table. Um, and so then, depending on whatever their need is, I'll build it. And over the years, I've built out a bunch of templates for all kinds of automation processes that are typical in the medical billing world.
Right.
So you've got, patient intake, you've got charge intake. I've got a lot of I ended up creating a lot of middleware where I'll translate something like an HL7 file into some other format. So a lot of what I have done over the years is automation more than, like a database that holds maybe like invoices or something like that. I haven't really been exposed as much to that. Um, but FileMaker has been really the magical middleware tool that has enabled us
Yeah.
to do so much. So the company that I was working with for the first 10 years of my medical billing career was a small company. We only had like 12 employees, but we had a huge client base. And so when that company got acquired, the new parent company couldn't figure out how we were doing so much with so few people. And a lot of that was really because of the magic of FileMaker. Yeah. I'll say it was FileMaker, not necessarily me. But that carried on, and that was a good size mom and pop shop. 135 employees, which is, for a mom and pop.
From a
Um,
12 person to that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up becoming partner in this company over about 5 years. And as you know, we just sold last year to
Yeah.
this huge, um, corporation. So, that's been kind of the journey. And as far as how I start a process, now I have these templates that I usually work off of because a lot of the work that I do has been um, what do you call it? Pretty consistent in terms of the workflows.
Right.
But what's interesting now is that um, I've taken my FileMaker skill set, and this is something that I really want to bring as a board member to the community, is what I really felt, especially going into the corporate, environment, that I didn't have the skill set. In the company that I was with, I was kind of jack of all trades, master of none. Um, I still was doing server stuff, server administration, hardware. I was doing all the development, and also talk about some of the web development stuff, and how I kind of tend to always go with that now on new projects. But I didn't realize until I joined this big corporate world that my FileMaker skill set really applied, and it didn't take that much to get over a new learning curve, whether it's like web development or something like that. And I've been able to not only compete in the corporate world environment, but really shine. And so, a lot of it is really attributable to my experience with FileMaker and the FileMaker community. So I'm just hugely indebted and grateful to all things FileMaker. I really want to see FileMaker move forward and continue to grow. And in any way that I can do that, I'm here for that mission.
I think that's really great. I think one of the things that you mentioned, and again, I mentioned this when we talked about doing this session, Sol, and you heard this too, along with the other board members. You're a complete unique entity in the realm of standing amongst all these other people. You got, Steve Abrahamson and Chris Moyer and Bob Shockey, myself. Well, we're all custom developers. We have a wide variety of customers. We have sometimes one or more people working together on stuff. And here you are inside, the bowels of a corporation. You're there for years. You're not doing 25 different industries in the course of a year. You're doing deep, deep, deep stuff in an industry that you've become incredibly acclimated in. So there's that. Number one, your domain is narrower but much deeper. And number two, you've got a tremendous amount of responsibilities. I gotta manage servers. I gotta manage other applications. I gotta weigh in on some new technology that the organization's looking at. You have to wear, that IT hat along with the developer hat. That's really kind of unique. Again, there are other people in the community that are in-house, but it's a unique footprint for the kind of people that you're standing with here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been interesting to kind of go back and forth with some of you guys. There's always this idea that the grass is greener. I mean, I love FileMaker, and so every time I have to, you know, figure out some firewall implementation or do an Azure migration or something like that, it's like, oh gosh, I got to do that thing, and I really just want to do development, right? And so I daydream sometimes about, well, what would it be like to just, leave that world and go into just FileMaker development? And many times when I, meet with you guys and talk with you guys, I get really inspired and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna jump. But I get pulled back and it's nerve-wracking at some point as an adult when you have a family and all this because, starting off fresh is it's not as secure as staying with something that you've been in successful at for 21 years.
Yeah.
But I think it's really a testament again to FileMaker that you can be successful in both worlds.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's great. I mean, I'm sure, some of the management, some of the budget, some of the hiring and stuff, those are responsibilities that you wear in the kind of position that you have. And many of our colleagues here don't have to, they can basically just focus on the craft of building stuff and so forth. One of the other things, you got a couple of things I want to talk about here, some technology affinities that you have. And one of the things, this goes back years ago, back when we were meeting in public, here's this youngster walking in talking about Azure. Everybody in the world talking about AWS, and you got this punk over here going, no, Azure is cool and it's got this and so forth. You were an early advocate of that, and I grant, I'm sure your shop full Microsoft, et cetera, in that realm. So tell us about, just in broad strokes, your experience with Azure, pros and cons versus AWS, and how you see it fitting into your workflow.
Yeah. I think they're both such great platforms, Azure and AWS. I've had experience with both, certainly a lot more with Azure. Um, you know, it's it's one of those things that when you first get into it on either side, it's going to have a learning curve, right? Um, and it can be really scary. And the GUI for Azure is very boring, and so there's no inspiration or but it's also very simple because it's very boring and everything is search based. You can just search up in the it's kind of like Max in that sense. Just use Spotlight and you can find anything you want, right? And so fortunately, if you have some need to dive into Azure and you have any kind of AWS experience, I think that your AWS experience will very quickly, translate. You do have to translate because things are named differently, and there's a concept of something called a resource. Everything is a resource in Azure, and there's resource groups. So There might be a resource group for security, and you put all of your resources into your resource group for security. And things are very siphoned and siloed, excuse me, in that sense, in Azure. But really, um, you know, at this point, computers, servers, firewalls, all this stuff has really homogenized um, conceptually. So I don't think it's that big of a leap to go to either one. If you're used to AWS, cool. I think, by all means, stick with it. If you're looking for something new, or if for some reason you find a client that is in Azure or wants to be in Azure, there's no reason to be afraid of it. It's very accessible. So that's about the main thing I would say about it.
Got it. One of the other points that you've also been, and again, going back years, you've always been, in the next segment, we've got, JavaScript guru Jeremy Brown coming on behind you, right? So careful what you say about JavaScript because he's going to bust you on it if it's, but you've been a big proponent back in the, Angular. I don't know if you were in Ember, but I think you were in Angular. But you've been pushing and doing integrations with JavaScript in FileMaker for years.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started with so Angular is interesting because Angular came out first, Angular 1. And it was like the big JavaScript platform that everybody jumped in. And a lot of lessons were learned there. And then what do you call it? Why am I drawing a blank right now? The big one that everybody uses. React. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Facebook came out with React, which fixed a lot of the issues that Angular, which was the first iteration of a JavaScript framework, really the first big one. I mean, there was other ones like you said, Ember, and some other ones, but the first really big name contender, because Angular is a Google product and React is a Facebook product. Anyways, what happened for me was all of our clients and my boss at the time, everybody wanted to be on the web, right? And I knew that, FileMaker wasn't really at the time able to go on the web. So I kept stalling on going toward the web. I guess I did work on some PHP web stuff way back in the day with FileMaker using, I don't know if you remember. It was called what was it called? FM Studio. FM Studio. Yeah, and it was like a little plugin you could put in a Dreamweaver, and it would connect your PHP page to FileMaker. And you know what? I think I built about 10 websites with that, and they all are still in use, believe it or not.
Wow.
I've upgraded, the PHP versions and all this stuff, but they're actually still in use to this day. But when I discovered, actually when the data API came out, I realized I have to jump in full speed ahead on this. And I really had a hard time choosing. But what happened was, it's kind of like AI is right now. Every week, this is the new best model, and then I've seen this meme where this week is
flavor of the month.
They're the best one, and the next one is Google's Gemini, and then and this is where you are right now in the cycle, right? So at the time, Angular 2 had come out, and Angular 2 was poorly named because every time you did a search for any kind of code on Angular, it would give you the old stuff. They should have renamed it because it's a totally different product than Angular 1. But I guess Google was trying to capitalize on the success of Angular 1, so they wanted to keep the name. They really screwed themselves because it was really confusing in the beginning to use Angular 2 because you would end up finding code online to try to help you that was based on Angular 1, and then it wouldn't work. And so people got really, frustrated. But I ended up finding a really good instructional video set on Udemy, and started having fast success with the data API in Angular. And all of a sudden I realized, that I had a choice now of every single application that I had with FileMaker could now be put on the web without using WebDirect. And I started doing it, and it was so much more accessible as a platform than the PHP experience. I don't really like PHP. I know it's very powerful. I know you can do a lot with it. But yeah, as a creative person, it's more technical. And so these JavaScript frameworks, and I'm sure Jeremy can attest to this, just really are a lot more fun, if you will. They're more creative. And Angular is unique because Angular actually doesn't use JavaScript per se. It uses TypeScript, which, if anybody's familiar with TypeScript, is what they call a superset of JavaScript. And what it does, TypeScript actually, all the things that they say, historically that were issues with JavaScript, with where you would kind of run into problems with different types specifically, and all the weird things that happen in JavaScript, TypeScript kind of addresses those. And so I got to start off, with Angular as a framework, which this is really, and I would love to have a full hour-long session to talk about why I prefer Angular over React for FileMaker. And I know that there's a lot of good reasons to use React, and I've used it. It's an excellent framework. But coming from a FileMaker perspective, FileMaker is a tool that includes everything. You've got the GUI. There's this concept of an MVC, model view controller, to build an app. And the model is the database, the view is the GUI, and the controller is your scripting, whatever script language you're using. FileMaker comes with all three built in, and you can, stay in one ecosystem, and it's very opinionated in the way that, well, if you're going to create a script, you have to use a script workspace, and you can only use specific, script steps, right? You can't just free.
There are guardrails. Yeah.
There's guardrails. And Angular is very much like that. It's all inclusive. It has guardrails. There's very specific ways to do things. Whereas React is like, the analogy that I like to give is it's like SQL Server. You can use SQL and it's very powerful. And maybe some people would argue it's better than FileMaker, but you have to pair it with some other language, some other, controller language. You have to pair it with some other front end GUI. You can use anything. You can use .NET, you can use PHP, you can use JavaScript, you can use Java. You can put anything with a SQL backend, but you have to be the one that figures out, makes the choices of what to do. And then good luck trying to find your exact model of what you did and find examples of how to do that code, right? So whereas with FileMaker, everybody that's using FileMaker is using the same script steps, is using the same workflows, using the same, patterns generally. And that's what I find happens with Angular. So from a FileMaker's mindset, Angular really lives in that same kind of workflow and zone, and I just tend to prefer it. So yeah, bottom line though, going back to your original point, is that yeah, I got started working with JavaScript frameworks early on, Angular 2 when it came out, which was just after I keep losing it. React came out. I keep wanting to say Facebook. It's not. And now pretty much every project that I start will always have a web front end with FileMaker backend. And this is another point that and I know we'll probably need to wrap it up here. This is another point that being part of the board, I would like to begin to evangelize, if you will, like the great Rick Kelman, is that we have maybe kind of a super kind of a secret weapon, if you will, being FileMaker developers. Because if we can learn and if we can use web development on the front end, what I found, because I've been in a bunch of web development conferences now, is web developers are really strong on the front, but not really strong on the back end. And because FileMaker is rapid application development on all fronts, whether you're talking about the GUI or the scripting
MVC, right?
Space,
Yeah.
We can use things like the calculation fields in the database, things like the scripts. Even with FileMaker Server, you get things that these other web developers really struggle with. Like, for example, in deployment, how are you going to do authorization? How are you going to do, is there an API, a REST API available for your SQL backend or MySQL? You have to start putting all these different pieces together. FileMaker includes all of that. Plus, we're relational database developers first, and so we understand how to create efficiencies in those relationships, whereas other web developers don't. So if we can learn the web development, which especially now with AI, and that's a whole nother tangent we can get into on another day, but with vibe coding and stuff like that. But if we can learn web development, I think that we can actually be more efficient developers on a full stack platform than most normal web developers. And so I really want to encourage and evangelize this idea that as FileMaker developers, we have a superpower. And if we can get over the initial learning curve of of learning web development, which is much easier now with platforms like React and Angular, and which is really amazing with AI and vibe coding. I think that the FileMaker community can not only thrive, but could potentially dominate web development.
Yeah, I think the first and foremost, your point about the guardrails, and to some extent, we talk about the creative aspect of FileMaker developers, and part of the creativity is we have these guardrails. We don't have, insane amounts of options available to us. We've got 88 keys on the keyboard, and we're going to learn to make a really good song with that, right? So we're sort of imposed restrictions, but that allows us to put all of our juices on the creativity and the building of the app, and not so much of the management and the below the waterline stuff. The other thing that you said, which is also part of why you were selected to be on the board, and we've been thrilled with. Sol's on all these meetings, and like you're hearing him say today, folks, oh my gosh, I have this great idea about showing web this and web that and AI this. So he's just a hand pump of ideas right now, and we're going to just keep grabbing his legs and giving him a pump because we're going to be seeing some really good stuff coming from him. We're about out of time. I want to ask you if you're comfortable with this question, just because I think, you told us a little bit of the heartbreaking story about your first wife and so forth. We had dinner not too long ago, and you told us what's coming next. And number one, what's coming next to you on the personal front. Number two, how it came about. I think that's a really fun story.
Oh yeah, that's a fun story. So I am engaged. I'm very excited about that. We don't have a date set yet, but we did just buy a house, and so pretty excited about that. But the way that we met is really cute. So my son and her son were best friends in kindergarten, and they started hanging out, and she kind of knew the story of what had been happening, and so their family really just kind of poured a lot of love into my son, and so they hung out, they became great friends, and she was actually um, the dance teacher at their kindergarten school, and they did like tumbling and stuff like that. And of course, I put him in every single after school program possible because I was a single dad. And so he was doing that program. And our lives weren't kind of aligned at the time, so we didn't we didn't connect at that time. But the boys stayed friends, and then eventually, years later, we ended up dating, and now we're engaged to be married.
So your two sons are best friends already, and they're going to be stepbrothers at some
Yep.
point. Wow, that's
Yep.
such a great story.
Yeah, it's fun.
All right. Thank you very much, Sol. Really appreciate this expose. And again, I think you guys are going to see gratefully a heavy hand by Sol in a lot of the content that we have coming forward. And again, it's just great having interesting perspectives coming from an in-house developer, somebody who's got such an affinity for web development. And he's just got a bright mind and a really good set of insights. And I think our entire group's going to benefit because of that.
Well, thank you, Dave. I really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to participating.
Great. So now I think we are pivoting on to our final segment with the esteemed Jeremy Brown. Jeremy, I think you've got the floor.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Good to see you all here. So today I want to talk about just more of what I do. In this case, a specific example of working with Excel files into FileMaker, and you'll see why it's a little bit, or why it's worth talking about, hopefully. Reminder, I'm Jeremy Brown. I do integrating magic. I'm a teacher. I'm a JavaScript developer. I have a community, community.jsandfm.com, where together, all of those things, I work to build JavaScript interfaces inside of FileMaker that perform certain tasks, that do certain things for folks, and present the data or allow data to be put in different ways. I try to train people as well. Lots of FileMaker developers have come through the course and are enjoying it. And even with the explosion of AI, I think it's still worth learning some JavaScript, but we can talk about that later. Today I want to talk about a particular issue that I was brought on to help with. I'll show the problem, and then I'll look at the solution that I came up with, given my perspective. So there's a problem where we have one client file that is a FileMaker file, and it contains a lot of records from different clients of my client, companies of my client. And all of those needed to be imported into a particular table. They were, I think, union dues or something like that, and they just needed to all be put into one particular FileMaker table. In this case, there are 23 different companies that send Excel files once or twice a month to my client, and the client works with them. So the problem obviously the problem is very visible when you open up the Excel files, in that every company had a different order of fields, a different name for some of the fields. You know, first name might be a one word, it might be two words, it might just be the word first. So everything was a little bit different. And so before I arrived, they were trying to figure out how to solve this problem. I think one person did come up with a great solution where they would have a processor file. They would take each Excel file's data from the columns and map it into the FileMaker columns. That's what we need to do in this case. We need to take an Excel file and we need to map it to the FileMaker table. In this case, the dues table, for example. Again, so again, one of the solutions was to build a processor FileMaker file. And I love this idea. I think it was great, where you take one client's file, you build into this processor FileMaker file the ability to map the first name column to the actual first name column inside of the actual data file. And you just do that. You build this processor file for client one. Right, so that works, and it can do all the importing. It can import the data into certain FileMaker fields inside of this processor that then can get exported out and then imported into the other FileMaker file. The problem, of course, with this is you have one FileMaker processor file per client. You do have to do all that import. At least that's what was done. You import it into the processor file. You map it there however you want. Then there was some work that needed to be done with duplicate records. And then you export these records and you push them into the main file. So since in this case, there were 23 different client files, Excel files, there were 23 different FileMaker files that were built. Don't know the reason by that. I'm sure we could have done it with one FileMaker file, but 23 sounded good, or at least that's what happened. And so that's what was built. There were 23 client files. Inside of that were 23 processing mechanisms, the scripts, the tables, the imports, the exports, and then all of the connections to the ultimate destination of the files. So that was interesting, and it worked. Of course, if things change, you have to go to each file and make updates, whatever the case is. Now, you're probably thinking, well, why don't you just have all 23 clients have the same Excel file? That's a good question. One I was wondering about. When I was a teacher, I had to import a bunch of data into, state education sites, and we had to have the columns in the exact order and exact name, or everything failed. So it made sense to me to do it that way, but this was not the case here. We're not asking the clients, the companies who are bringing these Excel files, we're not asking them to use the same file all the time. So because I have some experience and in JavaScript and FileMaker, my mind immediately went to a solution that was built inside of a web viewer. There's a particular library, if you're familiar with it, called XLSX that does a lot of great things with Excel files. It can, inside of a browser, or in our case, a web viewer, it can read an Excel file. It can get the column headers. It can grab all of the data out of each of the rows and columns and export and turn it into JSON, which we all love as FileMaker developers. We can actually create a brand new Excel file with data. And there's just a bunch of stuff we can do. I think a pro version allows you to color code and background color different cells. There's a lot of possibilities with this. So I was thinking, how could I use that? So I worked on using that library to build a little widget. You don't see the widget here because this is basically a processing kind of widget where the web viewer isn't visible. I built a widget so that I could take the file at the top where it says drop the file in, and I could run it through this JavaScript library through the code that I built to extract out the data from those fields, but then remap them to fields that I was interested in. So you see there on the right, the JSON result. That is the JSON result. The bottom container field is the processed file, and it contains the column headers that, as you can see in the JSON, match what I needed for the ultimate destination table. So this XLSX file allowed me to do that. Had to think through this problem, like, okay, so I see this file A here has these columns. How am I going to ask the JavaScript to take those columns and push them and map them to what I want them to be? So I came up with, oh, here's my code, I guess. It's just a XLS JSON using the JS dev environment, by the way. What's important, I think, is the map, and it may be a little bit hard to see here. I created a map, one for each of the clients, that took the actual file, the column name that they had in their Excel file as the property, and then the value of each JSON item was a value. It was either sorry, I'm gonna reverse that. The property names there on the left, if you can see them, employer name, is the actual field name that is in the FileMaker file. The value of that string, that I don't know what you call it, the value of that item is either a function or it's a field name from the Excel file. All right, so that's a little bit crazy, but that's what it is. You can see on the bottom part, if you can see the word Alaska there, there's a bunch of just strings that represent the name of the column that's in the client's Excel file that will eventually get mapped to the right FileMaker field. But I won't go into details about this. I can show you more examples of it later. So this worked really well. I had all the 23 different maps inside of the JavaScript, and that was great. And this caused this to work. It's a great generic processor that is particular to a particular scenario. Up at the top left there, you can see the airline. It was Alaska. So that comes into the JavaScript. The JavaScript, okay, it says, all right, we're working with the airline Alaska. I'm going to go find its map, and I'm going to then use that to process the data. And that's exactly what happened, and it worked well. But then I was thinking, well, that's kind of fine, but what if we need to add another client? What if Alaska's client Excel file column headers change? How are we going to handle that? So I guess this is the map. This is the other. So what I came up with this as a new problem. I needed to build a mapping tool that takes FileMaker fields and maps them to Excel fields. So it can work for anything. It can work for any FileMaker table, and it can work for any Excel file that a client happened to give us. And I think here are some other needs that I had. I needed to be able to show the FileMaker fields that we were that were in the target table. I needed to show the Excel fields so that there could be a map created between the two. And I needed to allow someone to match it. And then I need to be able to store the map. So I worked on this using JavaScript and FileMaker and some AI to help me construct what I call a configurator, config maker. I think configurator is taken up by that name has been taken up by the add-ons. But this right here is what I've built. So this shows the demo that I'm going to display in a few minutes, but it shows at the top in a web viewer, of course, the FileMaker field that was extracted from the table or that was gotten through various means, and the Excel field that this will be mapped to. So here's these in detail. The left one there is the actual Excel file column headers. Again, I'll demonstrate this all in a minute. And that's where they could pick it. So I built this configurator to read the Excel file that you drop into a container field, to grab the column headers, and to display them into a column, a drop down here. On the right here is a close-up of the mapping type. How is this field going to be mapped? Are we going to map it with a direct mapping from the Excel column, or can we use any one of the other options here to put something into that column when the data gets processed? So, I've got direct mapping chosen, but highlighted as return a fixed value. I could just return the word 1 if I wanted to, or something. So there's a lot of possibilities, and I can show those to you. So this is what it looks like in general. I have the configuration, and I'm using that to define the map or to refine the map if things have changed based on how the Excel file that was dropped in. And then once the map is set, I'm using that map inside of the processing, the XLS processing, to take all of the data out of the columns from my client file and map them to the correct FileMaker field name, column headers, or property values there. All right, so that's what this looks like in general. I'll show you what this looks like in real time, and we can walk through it. But that's what we did. So here's the setup. In my demonstration here, I have three Excel files that are student records. They're student test data. They're just all fake. I asked ChatGPT to create 3 separate Excel files that generated some data, some test data, but have different column headers, and you can see those there. And all 3 of these, because they come from 3 different schools in this case, needs to go into the FileMaker table there on the right. So that's what we're going to look at here and see what this can come up with. So let me stop the share, and let's see, where am I? I'm over here. All right, so we'll get rid of PowerPoint, and voila, here is my quick demo that I've extracted this out from a client process, and I'm just demonstrating it in this here. So we start with a page that they would go to start to import data. I'm going to just create a new record quick, and I will choose a school here, school 1. I'll choose a date, and I'll tell it that this is going to be test results. I'm going to drop some fake data into it. So this is school 1 fake data. And I'll show you that that's what this is. So the school 1 fake data is this image at the top, where student_ID is the name of the field, the column header that needs to go to the student ID field in FileMaker. All right, so we've got that. And just for fun, I guess I will open that up so we can see it, and I can not do any shenanigans here. So here is that Excel file, nice and clear. All right. So first thing this person would do is they would map the columns. Now for school 1, I've already built the map, and I just have it here in a layout calculation that says, here's what's going to happen. Again, the property names here, date, district, school, score, all of that stuff on the left there, the properties are the names of the FileMaker fields. The values of each is the current map, the last time I did this, of the Excel file. So when I map the columns, just to double check it, probably could work on the spacing here, but this shows this has been saved from that map, that the student ID FileMaker field will receive the data from the student_ID field column inside of the Excel file. So I can go through and double check these if I wanted to. Just quickly, all of the other options allow me to do interesting things. I could return a fixed value if I want, like points, whatever I want, just a string if I wanted to, or not NA or something. I could actually split columns. So I could take one column, like the student ID, and split it into two different columns. So I've got either the first or second or third value in that field, if it were like a first name field or something, a full name field. But let's get back to what this was. So in this case, it's really just a straight mapping from the FileMaker, from the Excel file column header to the FileMaker field. All right, so these are all good. I'm going to save that. I didn't make any changes, but I'm going to save that. And now I'm going to hit the processing, and it's going to bring up, well, there we go. It's going to bring up the FileMaker field in the processed section. And when I open this up, I'll make it bigger and smaller. We can see that the data has now been transformed from the columns that the client sent over, student underscore ID, to student ID. So now this is set for me to directly import into FileMaker if I wanted to, or into that table, that specific table. And obviously, I think we all know, I think that this is true, that when you want to create a bunch of records, importing is still the fastest. Is that true? I've tried this with other methods, and this seems to
Correct.
be the fastest. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that solves this problem. So now I think this works. I just built this, so I'm going to test this out. So now I was able to import those in. It simply exported them out to my desktop, to a temporary path, wherever that was. It imported them, and then it deleted the file off my hard drive. So now I have all 10 of those records entered. All right. I'm going to do it again at kind of faster speed. And I'm going to pick a larger one and see if this works. I've got one where it's 500 records. I don't think the mapping changes. Let's see, let's just make sure everything looks good. So I'm going to just hit process the file. I think I have a bug there with the JavaScript, so that's on me. So it's created that, open it up. Oh, that's because I did not shut this down. All right, let's try that again. There we go. There's my 500 records. And now I can simply import. And now I have 500 extra records that just got added, 510 total. Obviously, this is a local file, so it's going to be faster even, but this really nicely solves a lot of problems. And what I can do then is I can actually take this and say, I want this to be the students for school one, and say, now I'm going to have it import not the test results table, but into the student info table here. So I will do that. This is a students. I just select the date, doesn't really matter. Then I'm going to pick the student data, check the mapping. Now this works for any mapping that I need it to do, for any destination table with any FileMaker file, with any Excel file. So we got first name, last name, that matches, ID, school. There we go. And then I'll process it. Yeah, I got a bug. I tried to be clever and that messed everything up. So now let's see. I hope that's that one. Let's try it one more time. Yeah, that's broken. Okay, but that's supposed to be working there. So the idea is that I can take this map for this client and I can map it to the table. I can do that with anyone. I guess I could try another record with another test results. Let's try school 2. School 2 has different column headers. School 2 has different column headers, ID underscore number instead of student ID. So let's grab their data. There it is. Let's check the map. Now, if the map doesn't exist, all of these are going to be blank, and then I get to go through and I get to pick what where the data comes from. And this actually looks off. So let's fix it quick. This the student ID, the test ID, test code, assessment name is the test name, score is result, date is date taken, student full name, school district. Okay. So I'm going to save that map first, and let's just make sure it got saved. Yep, student ID and ID number. All right. So let's process this file. We'll fix that. Open that up, and there I go. So now, even though this came from a different client, the columns are exactly the same. And now I can go ahead and import those in. And now I have those extra 10 records from the other school, the other client that just came in. So this was just an example of using JavaScript to solve a great problem. Actually, in this case, I'm using 4 different widgets here. Actually, maybe I'm using 5. I'm using a config maker, an import widget that I built, and then I just put in some code to kind of fill in this space when I create a new record, so it doesn't look blank. But that is a solution to the problem, and I think it's really solved it. There's some issues to work out because apparently first names or full names are hard, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. So I need to figure out how to deal with when there are middle names in there, when it's a full name, or when there's a period, or when there's hyphen names or whatnot. So I can work through that and figure that out. But this was just an example of using the JavaScript that we have at our fingertips to create something that solves a problem. Any questions about this?
I want to point out one thing. Jeremy worked with Deb Norton on our team to build this, and we're looking at sort of a bit of under the hood work here by Jeremy. But the net goal of this was the interface that Jeremy built was incredibly easy for the end user to be able to grab a brand new spreadsheet coming in and be able to go, oh, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here, save it, push a button, slurp that data in. And then obviously we can manage getting it tucked into the master system behind the scenes. So the enablement, number one, the ability not to have to construct or edit or modify 23 separate scripts to manage or meet the needs of a client that may change or get added, but more importantly, to extend that power to the end user.
So yeah, this is what we can do with JavaScript. This is some great ways to use JavaScript to solve problems, whether it's React, I prefer React, or Angular, I guess, or Vue. There's a lot of great things out there with Vue right now as well. So JavaScript, it's still where it's at, and yeah, that's it.
Very cool. Thanks, Jeremy.
Yes.
Super, again, a super targeted problem solving issue, right? We've all had systems where, oh my gosh, I got all this data that's coming in. People, we don't have clients that have either the capabilities or the penchant for putting together an API call, and we've already got these legacy spreadsheets and we need to send them to you. And of course, eliminating all that reentry of data or having to manually tap each single sheet. So this is such a huge productivity gain for people with that sort of common problem. So great job. I think board members, I don't know if there's anything else. I think we have come to the conclusion of the meeting. I want to say special thanks to the gentleman at Harmonic Data. Again, to our own Chris Moyer for the excellent Tech News Roundup. Great getting a deep dive with Sol Rodriguez. And again, tip of the hat to Jeremy for this really cool implementation of JavaScript to solve the spreadsheet sneaker network issue that we all struggle with at times. All right, I think that's it. We're gonna shut things down next month, November 14th on Friday. I believe it's Matt. I don't know, Bob.
Yeah, it's
or...
Matt's meeting.
Yeah. I think Matt's running his first meeting, so we're going to be really looking forward to that as well. Good seeing everybody. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, all.